great as the first establishing dark Columbo episode.
That is true. All right, we're live, but we're not starting the show yet. Yeah, we're live, but we're not starting the show yet because nobody's watching because I just hit the button and I haven't made the announcement. But somebody might be listening to it later.
Damn.
Bro, what is wrong with Tubi? Like, apparently they're airing the Super Bowl, which is fine, but if you use the search bar, it gives you nothing and it says, search is taking a Super Bowl break. Don't worry, it'll be back after the game. What are you talking about?
What?
Huh?
Sorry, you can't use the rest of our website because we have to play football for you.
Because we have to play the Super Bowl. What are you talking about?
We can't let you look at anything.
Sorry, everyone. A Columbo podcast is canceled because of the Super Bowl.
Are they really showing the Super Bowl on Tubi?
We can't watch that shit.
So. Oh, you need to sign in to watch, but I guess it's probably free with ads.
I love when thing is anything for free and has it for me. You know?
For you.
All right. I made the announcement. We'll let people shuffle in before we start the official first episode discussion, the talks, Columbo talks. I went through a lot of different names for this show before Trevor came up with this one, which
I like this one.
This one is very good. I'm very glad that he came up with it because I don't think we should have called the podcast Columbros. That's not a good name.
No,
should it be called that one? What else did I have written down? I don't remember. I had a lot of bad ones. I was gonna call it just one more thing, but of course that was a pie in the sky to think that somebody wouldn't have already made a podcast about Columbo with that exact title. So instead of picking his most famous catchphrase, I just picked his second catchphrase.
My suggestion was
one of the ones that you brought up, Trog, that I'm sad that we didn't go with, even though it's, you know, it's good that we didn't go with it, but I'm really sad that the Bye Bye Sky High IQ podcast was left on the floor.
That's if we go at the rate of like doing one episode a week or every 2 weeks, I think we'll get to that one in 2027. So we got a ways to go. So
long con.
So probably naming the podcast after like a season 7 episode is not a great. It's not a bad idea. It just might be kind of confusing. Nope, I forgot to hit record. That's okay. We didn't say anything too funny.
My suggestion was, can I borrow a pen?
That's a good one too.
That would also be good.
Columbo has so many fun catchphrases.
He does.
He loves to use funny little words like his wife, and just one more of it. And it's in my pocket somewhere. I'm coughing. Dog.
He's just a barrel of catchphrases, ain't he?
He's just a barrel of ketchup, he is. Someone in chat says they hated the Bye Bye Sky High IQ, whatever the fuck that actual episode is called.
Oh, that was great.
I think that one is really fucking funny.
I love that episode. That one's so good. Oh.
Look forward to when we talk about it in like 8 years from now.
Yeah, exactly. But it's gonna take a while. I don't know. It could be that once we get into the meat of the show, the episodes do kind of run together. I'm not sure we'll be able to drum up an entire podcast worth of discussion for some random like season 4 episode of Columbo. So we might be able to go fast.
I imagine some of these will probably do like, 2 episodes in one or something.
Yeah, exactly.
They get like formulaic enough, not in a bad way for the most part. I should also say that I'm not very far into my Columbo journey. I'm only in like season 3, I think.
That's true. All right. Why don't we just we gave people time to file in. We've been live for 90 seconds. That's 5 minutes. That's long enough, right?
That's long enough. More than 90 seconds.
You've been recording for 90 seconds.
I've been recording for 90 seconds. I looked at the wrong number in OBS. But why don't we start off with saying what is our personal and close relationship with Mr. Lieutenant Columbo? What's when did you start watching it? You know, why? What does Columbo make you feel like when you see him?
When I see him, I feel a swelling sense of pride in my breast. And when I hear him, I clap my hands and play. I started watching Columbo, like, God, I guess a couple of years ago by now, because, like, a bunch of people that I watched on Twitch and, like, that posted on, like, Twitter and stuff at the time, shoutouts to Ty Tuesday, I think he was one of the ones that got me, like, aware of this shit, had me, like, what is this show that people keep talking about? Oh, this shit's from the 60s. Oh, this shit's just, like, on Internet Archive. And I pulled it up and I started watching it with my partner because I was like, do you want to just watch some, like, maybe weird, hokey old, like, 60s cop drama thing with me? And then it turned out it was fucking fun, so we just kept watching.
That is kind of the same for me, but the opposite. Trevor, my husband, just started watching it, and he actually got through the first whole season before I actually started watching it with him. So I started in, like, season 2, and yeah, I just kind of saw people were, like, making a bunch of jokes online. Like, Columbo was experiencing on a lesser level, like, sort of a Breaking Bad resurgence, you know, where it's like the show is already aired, but all of a sudden people are making a bunch of references, and I feel like I'm on the outside looking in. I'm like, I don't know what this is. But you honestly, I was basically, I'd say, instantly captivated. I think this show is, I mean, okay, is it the best show in terms of, like, writing, directing? No. But I think Columbo might have one of the most interesting premises for a show. Like, there isn't another show that did it this way, as far as I know. Which, if in case you're listening or watching this and you don't know what Columbo is, number one, that's kind of weird because we're gonna talk about it and you haven't even seen it. But
what are you doing here, man?
Today, I guess
it happens. But in case you don't know, Columbo is a TV show, which is is there, like, even a term for it? It's not a murder mystery, because it's not a mystery. There's no mystery in the
Thriller?
show.
No,
Kind
it's
of.
Thriller, detective thriller?
Because, you know, you have, like, a whodunit where it's like, well, the whole onus of the show is we're trying to figure out who did it. This is a How Catch 'Em, where we already know who did it, and we're trying to see, like, how the detective goes along and gets them.
Yes, so it's like every episode starts off with about between 15 and 30 minutes of you watching the murderer do the crime. And then the rest of the show is you following Lieutenant Columbo around, and he's trying to find basically the gotcha. Like, he's slowly picking away at the alibi of the murderer, which you know what the murderer did. So it's kind of fun to watch him kind of try to find the missing pieces, or maybe, like, something's not right here, something's not right there, something like that. And just it's honestly, it's so much fun. And it's crazy that the show can be so formulaic, but it's always good. And I think it's just because Peter Falk is just too good at being Columbo.
Peter Falk is a very charismatic little man, and there's a lot of fun in, like, the long, I don't even know if it's really cat and mouse, it's more like hound. Sort
that's
of like
true.
The sort of, like, slow buildup of tension as you go on, of just, like, these people who think they're, like, king shit of Dickhead Mountain, as, like, time goes on, like, slipping up in all these, like, tiny little ways that makes this one persistent little weirdo that has an eye for, like, strange details just, like, be like, hey, I know you did it. I can smell you from here. I'm coming to get you. And there's nothing they can do about it.
Like, the crux of every episode is the interplay between Columbo and the murderer, and just kind of, like, their interactions. And I mean, honestly, really, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen the show, seriously, go watch it. There's a reason that we're talking about it. It's because it's really good. It's like really fun.
I think even the episodes that fucking suck are still a lot of fun to watch for one reason or another.
Absolutely. I mean, I love the bad episodes. There's I mean, I'm the kind of guy that just likes bad, funny stuff in the first place, so I'm predisposed to it. But the bad episodes are going to be just as much fun to talk about as the good ones.
For sure. If you're American, you can watch it on Tubi. It's there for free. You can
watch it on Tubi. That's free. It's also on Prime Video.
It's on
if
Vimeo,
you have
it's
Amazon
on Poob.
Prime. It's on
It used
BB.
to be on the Internet Archive, and after that big kerfuffle happened where the service went down, it's not on there anymore. If you're like me and you're in Canada, the way you watch it is you beg a friend to screen share it to you.
Yeah. we gotta get the Canadian Columbo Brigade out there, like, canvassing to bring Columbo back to the Great White North.
My ass is not paying for Apple TV or whatever. I'm not giving a red fucking cent to those guys.
Yeah, it's on Peacock, I think. In fact, I don't even know if there's a place to watch the later seasons except for Peacock, or is that even what it's called? I don't know. Whatever. The fucking one of the 17,000 streaming services.
It looks like most of them are on Tubi.
Okay, if they're on Tubi, then at least if you're in America, there's a free option for you.
11, 12, 13, 14, 16.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the other thing that's fun about this show is that there's like what 6 or 7 seasons in the 70s, and then they took a break for like 20 years and came back, which is just really fun to watch a show time skip 20 years and just like the difference in filmmaking and acting and stuff. It's so much fun.
I'm looking forward to that.
They have like their run through the 60s and like early to mid 70s, and then they get to like 78. They take a break. The next season is like the late 80s.
Yeah, 89.
And then the next season is like the 90s, and then they technically have a season 10, but it's mostly a bunch of like specials they did intermittently afterwards.
I think the latest episode is like 2003, right? Or
Yep.
6? This shit was on the air after 9/11. That's like crazy.
I haven't even seen... They made like 2 episodes in 2000. I haven't even seen this fucking episode yet, but it's stuck in my head forever because the final episode of the series, number 1, it's the 69th episode they made.
Nice.
Number 2, it's called Columbo Likes the Nightlife, which is a really fucking
That
funny
is
title.
good. They were
Awesome.
on their title game for sure. There's a ton of great titles. And I'm sorry, I got off on an entire tangent. Mike, what's your relationship with Lieutenant Columbo? Do you like him? Do you love him?
I think about him nightly. I started watching Columbo, pretty much the same story, like several years ago. It's a show that I'd known about for a while. I just like never really thought to watch it, and I did, and I was like, oh, this fucking rules. So I also have a special sort of sub fondness for it because as a Los Angeles native, the show takes place in Los Angeles, so it's fun. It's fun watching like a 70s detective show and being like, oh shit, I know where that is.
That's really fun. I didn't even think about that.
I'm really excited to get to the later seasons because it'll be like seeing shit. I'm like, I was alive when this was filmed.
Yeah.
It's been real fun watching that with my partner who has been living in like SoCal for the past several years. So we'll just be like watching an episode and we'll just have to stop, and she's just like, I think I know this place. I think I know where this is. There's like an entire there's like maps that people have set up of like, yeah, here's where a bunch of like episodes were filmed, and like here's a bunch of major landmarks you can visit. You can go on like a Columbo pilgrimage.
Yo, that's sick. If I am ever in the area, I gotta go on the Columbo tour.
Yep.
Yeah. LA's just like that. I mean, they just film shit everywhere, and like my hometown has a lot of like little places where things have been filmed and stuff like that. So I'm just waiting for one of these episodes. There's one episode I saw that like, I think I just caught it on TV, so it's from a later season, but it was like in one part, I think, of like the Long Beach Harbor, and I was like, oh, I recognize this area. Like I can't tell you exactly where this is, but I know parts of it. But so that's fun, but also just the show on its own merits is fucking awesome. One thing I was thinking about last night is it's not exactly the same, but one thing that Columbo does make me think about a lot, and it's for sure not a coincidence, is Dial M for Murder, which is a stage play which Hitchcock made into a banger film. Great movie. I suggest everyone should watch it.
I should watch that.
Because it's like a murder thriller, but it's not exactly the same, but it's the same sort of deal where you are established in meeting all these characters. You realize that one of them is planning to kill his wife, and then you're like watching the whole like preparation process. You watch it happen, and then something goes wrong, and then you're watching like the fallout of it and like everything that follows up to, you know, them catching the murderer. Sorry to spoil it, but like it's really good.
Shit.
And I know it's not a coincidence because 2 actors from the Hitchcock movie were in like season 1 and 2 of Columbo.
Oh.
But the murderer from Dial M for Murder is Ray Milland, I think his name is. He was in the I don't remember which episode it was, but it's in like a greenhouse, like where he catches him. He's like it's something that like he coerces his nephew into doing something, and then the other one is when the 2 Shakespeare actors kill a guy. The guy they kill, just that he's literally in like one scene, but he's the inspector in Dial M for Murder. So like little overlaps like that. I'm like, all right, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Which is really good.
There's an interesting history for like Columbo sort of like coming out as a thing that they do in general, where it's like it's like the 60s. I think it's literally 1960, and like NBC is doing the Chevy Mystery Show, which is like kind of like what Columbo is, where it's like an anthology of like a bunch of different mysteries. They have an episode called Enough Rope. Eventually that gets adapted by Richard Levinson and William Blink into a stage play in 62. And then eventually they adapt their stage play into a made-for-TV movie in 1968, which they play on the the NBC Sunday mystery movie block, called Prescription Murder, starring Peter Falk as Detective Columbo.
There you go.
Is there like, I wonder if there's footage anywhere of like a recording of the stage play version of this episode? Because watching it, you really do get the stage play kind of vibe, and maybe that's just due to how they filmed things back in the 70s, where it's a lot of like static cameras, and you don't get a lot of, you know, not a whole lot of crazy camera work or anything. It is really usually just like looking at some guys talking to each other in a room. But
there's a couple shots in this specific episode that we can talk about later, but like for the most part, it's very like of the era, where a lot of the cinematography feels very flat.
Yeah. And that's pretty common all the way throughout most of the show. I mean, you know, they get better at it, and sometimes worse, but it's, you know.
Yeah.
That's just what the 70s were.
My sort of, this isn't the right expression, but my sort of canary in the coal mine for this thing probably was a stage thing at some point that got adapted to film. There's a bunch of little things, but one concrete thing I can point to is there's like always like locations that are reused and revisited a lot.
Yep.
It's if there's a location that's like the setting for like a scene, and there's a lot of characters going in and out of there.
Yeah.
Like there's a guy in a location, he's talking to his wife, the wife leaves, and then he's there alone for a little bit, and then like later a different character shows up in the same scene, they talk about something, and then one of them like that's from a play. Like I
Right.
can
it
already
does
tell
feel
you
very stage
that's
play like
stage play writing.
Yeah.
It makes sense. And actually, talking about the stage play nature of Columbo, before we just dive into talking about the episode proper, this is a fun little fact, is that did you know that Columbo's famous catchphrase, "Can I borrow a pen?" No, his other one. His famous catchphrase, "Just one more thing," exists because when they were... this is hearsay. I don't know if this is true. This could just be fucking made up as far as I know. But according to what I read on the internet, that line existed because they were writing the stage play. They had Columbo leave a scene too early, and they didn't want to go back and rewrite the scene. So they had him just come back onto the scene after leaving the stage and say just one more thing, and then keep acting after that. So
I believe that.
I don't know if it's real, but it's a fun story one way or another.
I think my favorite thing is specifically about like, oh yeah, just one more thing being like the famous Columbo catchphrase is like, I don't even feel like he says that specifically super often.
Well, I'm going to keep a tally, to be honest. I kept a tally during this episode.
He says it in this episode. He says it at least once in this episode.
He says it twice.
Which made me like clap my hands. Nice. But like, he does things that are basically him saying it, but he doesn't say it specifically super often, I feel, which is fun.
It's like, and they play with it later, but like the whole thing, especially once you get a number of episodes in, you start being familiar with like Columbo's modus for like catching people and the way that he like fucks with people. It's always like, it's not especially prevalent in this episode, but like especially in later episodes, there's like the just one more thing is always like, all right, I'll get out of your hair, and then like leave them just like a moment of thinking they're alone, and it's like, oh wait, actually, and then like just gauging their reaction to shit.
Right.
And like a lot of you realize at a certain point that like, especially like, I kind of noticed it in this episode going back and watching it, but I wasn't thinking about it at the time. There's a lot of these episodes where like the murder happens, you watch it, you see the fallout, you see the police investigating it, Columbo's there, and then like the first scene where Columbo sees the murder, just like some routine scene, you can see that Columbo's like, oh, that guy did it.
Yes.
Yeah, 100% it was him. So now it's just like, I just have to find evidence now.
So that's funny because what me and my husband always say is that Columbo's superpower is that he's seen the intro. Like he has a magical third eye, and he saw the same thing that you saw. He saw the murderer do it. That's his superpower.
Columbo is genre savvy. He knows he's in the TV show. He's read the script.
He's Deadpool. He's the Deadpool of detectives.
Yeah, it's less like he has precognition, and it's more like he just has like he realizes he's in a narrative, and it's like, all right, this person's wife dies in mysterious circumstances. This guy was mysteriously out of town right after it happened. He just showed up and didn't call his wife when he entered the room, and like, oh yeah, it was him.
It is always helpful.
It was this guy.
That in these Columbo episodes, it is always the guy that is most likely to have committed the murder in the first place. That's also helpful. I mean, you know, you'll see it as you watch all the episodes, but I have to imagine anytime Columbo sees a writer or a movie star or just anybody famous,
musician,
he's just like, oh, you killed them. Like it's always the guy that you think it is.
Well, we'll get into this like in later episodes, obviously, but there's so many episodes where it's like, yep, here's an artist or a performer or some famous guy, and Columbo's always like, yeah, you know, my wife, she's a real big fan of you, and then it's like, and that's the murderer, so it's like, damn. Yep. His wife just has this psychic sense where like anyone or anything she's a fan of is like, yep, that's gonna be a murderer someday.
Well, that's another thing that we can get into in later episodes, but I have a fucking game theory. I think Columbo's wife doesn't even exist. I think
people think that.
I think she's a figment. Not a figment. He's not like crazy. He's not imagining this person, but you know.
Yeah.
It's like a tool to like nestle his way in and like make people drop their guard. I think she's 100% real because I think it's funnier if all these things that he says are true.
Yes.
Yes.
I think it actually depends. Some episodes she exists, and some episodes she doesn't exist. That's.
It's just classic case. It's a classic case of Occam's wife.
Yeah, exactly.
My wife, you know, she's real into them foreign philosopher types. She was telling me about this guy, Schrödinger or something. He's got this theory about a box and a cat. I'm thinking to myself, when I leave home, my wife, it's like she's in the box there. Is she real? Is she alive? What happened to her? I don't know.
That was good. That was good, but I was really hoping you would end the sentence at, you know, my wife, she's real.
She's real.
You know,
in case you were wondering,
I love her a lot.
She's definitely extant. You don't have to worry.
I'm gonna go home to her tonight, and we're gonna do things that, you know, couples do together. It won't be weird.
Now, how about this for a theory? Columbo's wife, real. Anytime he brings up a cousin, not real. Those are all fake.
Oh, shit.
Oh, for sure.
He's always talking about his cousins and shit. Like,
well, there's the one with the movie star where he got his cousin on the phone.
That is true.
Like, talk to them, which that could have just been an elaborate act, but...
Well, yeah, we'll talk about elaborate acts when we get to the conclusion of this episode as well. One of the best parts of the show. In fact, yeah, how about we dive into actually talking about the episode. So this episode, called Prescription Murder, it opens up, and as we said before, Lieutenant Columbo, this might be like one of the longest before you actually see him, you know? Which makes sense.
Some episodes have like long drawn out intros, but it is like straight up 30 plus minutes before you get to
you gotta wait. You gotta wait to see Columbo, which is very funny watching this episode not as the first episode I've ever seen, where you're kind of just like constantly waiting, and then you're like, wow, they're really going in on this murder plot, because they, you know, when they kind of get into the swing of the show, the murders get a little bit more simple than this one. This one, they like very much, I wouldn't say it's drawn out. Like, it's still interesting to watch, but it is very meticulous. It's very methodical.
A lot of the episodes, this one especially, have like this very slow, like intentional, methodical kind of not quite meandering, but like it's a very slow pace where it like takes its time to like establish things and kind of like establish like, you know, tension and friction and show you what's going on.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And it doesn't feel like it's like, I mean, in this episode, at least specifically, it doesn't really feel like it's like wasted time. It's like, no. We're very intentionally taking our time to like draw this out and show you
important.
How much of this is like perfect, and then how much of this is all falling apart afterwards. It's good.
And it makes sense because they have to show you, the viewer, everything that the murderer took into account, right? Because that's what makes it, you know, that's like the intrigue. That's his like, okay, you watch him cover his tracks so well. It's like, how are they going to get him? He did everything. And the murder in this episode is Dr. Ray Fleming, who is a psychiatrist. And he
is played by Gene Barry, who you might also know from the 1953 War of the Worlds.
Oh, really? No, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Legitimately, I am not. I think Columbo might be some of the oldest media I've watched, like you know, actively watched, like put my eyes on the screen and didn't look away type watch. But that's interesting. I didn't know that. And so he is having an anniversary with his lovely wife.
They're at the big debutante ball that they're doing. His wife looks like she's gonna fucking explode like a volcano anytime he's near another woman. They bring out a fucking cake, and the cake just says 10 happy on it.
I didn't even realize that. That's a good point, actually.
It's a dog shit cake. It's wonderful.
So, I do have a note about this scene. I had to look this up. I was like, okay, they're playing some kind of game where you answer yes or no. What the hell is Botticelli? Is that what they said?
Yeah. Botticelli.
This is like not relevant to the plot at all, but they were just like doing something weird, and I had to write down in my notes like, what the hell is Botticelli? And then I look it up, and it's like a guessing game that I guess was all the rage in 1969.
Yeah.
They're doing like, look how smart and sophisticated I am. I know a bunch of famous people, and you guys don't.
It's like the game is like, I'm thinking of a guy. Is it this guy? No. This guy? No.
Right. I looked up.
Guy. Fuck. How was I supposed to know that?
I looked up the rules, and what it is that somebody says like, "Oh, are you blank?" Like describing a person, and if you're the person that's saying yes or no, what you have to do is you have to say no, and then you say I am not, and then name a person.
Right.
That. Is that it's a confusing game. This is not relevant to the plot at all, but I had to bring it up because it tickled me.
It's like playing Guess Who, but when your opponent goes, "Do you have red hair?" you go, "No, I am not Jingles the Clown."
Yes, exactly, like that. And I bet that was really fun before they invented video games.
They didn't have Mario yet.
Right. That scene would have been way better if he was playing Mario Kart. And they were like, wow, Dr. Fleming, you're so good at Mario Kart. How do you win every time?
Yes, it's actually rather simple to dodge the blue shell if you simply time your mini turbo on 150cc or higher. It's quite droll once you've had time to practice.
Exactly. So they're having a big anniversary, but then the phone rings. And it turns out that Dr. Ray Fleming is getting called away to respond to a patient having an anxiety attack. So he claims. They
specifically mention like anxiety attacks in like the 60s, which I think is kind of wild. Like, damn, I didn't realize that was like an established thing that was like, you know, understood by like medical practice. And then his fucking wife is just like, so give him horse tranquilizers, whatever. And it's like, oh, okay, that's what my conception of it is. I see.
So already in the first scene, you kind of get the idea that this marriage is perhaps a bit strained, And that becomes very obvious in the next scene when we see Dr. Fleming arrive at a pool house of some kind, or a fancy house, and there's a beautiful woman swimming in the pool, and you find out that Mr. Ray, Dr. Ray, is cheating on his wife.
Beautiful actress woman is played by a funny enough name, Catherine Justice.
That's ironic.
I tried to look up some things about her. She was Miss Ohio when she was younger, but was disqualified for Miss Universe because she was 17 instead of 18.
Well,
she did a shit ton of like TV and made-for-TV like movie roles, and is still alive to this day. Her last like acting role was in 2015.
Oh wow! Well, congratulations for living, I guess. Congrats.
The wife was played by Nina Foch, I think is how you pronounce that. Foch.
Sounds right to me.
Her whole like cinema oeuvre was she played a lot of like aloof, sophisticate types, like she does in this one.
She does a good job.
Yeah, she eventually became like a drama instructor, and I did also write down in brackets in all caps in the 10 Commandments as the White Pharaoh's daughter.
Oh, okay. Illustrious role. So we find out that Dr. Fleming is cheating on his wife and basically just overall just kind of seems like a sleazebag.
He's such a fucking creep. He's like going over and this woman is like, oh, I had it so rough. I was an anxious mess. I was a complete disaster. And then you came into my life and now you use your magic healing and you love me forever, sir. And his body language is so uncomfortable. He's like square and rigid as a fucking statue. His kisses are like really fucking weird. He's just like flat face, flat affectation at all time. Just like, yes, I love you so much. By the way, I ought to strangle you.
By the way, we need to talk about that. Yeah, and
they do such a good job of making him a fucking creep through the whole episode.
That is definitely a running theme. Well, you know, it kind of depends, I guess, but I would say most Columbo episodes will make you dislike the murderer. They go out of their way to make the murderer secretly dislikable because, you know, public facing, this guy doesn't have anything wrong, but you, the viewer, are lucky and you get to see into his private life and find out that he's just a total dickhead.
Basically, every
also
episode,
they commit murder.
Murder is bad.
Every fucking episode, more or less, is about someone who's in some way rich or powerful or otherwise well off, and they think they're above everything and they can get away with anything they want, and also they like hate other people and are really bad at maintaining relationships and have to kill their way out of it.
Yep. So Dr. Fleming, he goes over to this woman's house and kisses her and does bad guy stuff. Comes back, his wife is fucking pissed at him.
She's mad.
She's really mad. She basically says, I know you've been cheating on me for a long time. Your ass is getting divorced. I'm calling my lawyer. To which Dr. Fleming goes, well, you caught me.
Then you won't get to go to Acapulco with me.
Yeah, he says, oh, but you thought I was cheating, but you're wrong. I was planning a secret trip to Mexico, and we're going to go tomorrow. And I get that this is a movie, but it is funny that instantly works and is not questioned at all. She's just instantly like, oh, Mexico, let's go right now. Like, just she's instantly.
She's like, I fucking hate you. I can't stand you. You're in the doghouse tonight. I'm calling my lawyer. I know you're cheating. I know you just want me for my fucking money. I'm gonna make a scandal. It's over for you. And he just goes, we're gonna go on vacation in Acapulco. And she's just like, oh my God, fuck me now.
Yeah.
The best part?
Pretty much literally.
Yeah, literally. But like, one thing that I just thought was like really funny about that is like, she like, the crux of that scene is like, okay, obviously you were cheating on me. You like snuck out at like an opportune time. Like you've
during
had
your anniversary,
history,
no less.
During your anniversary, you've had a history of promiscuity. And he's like, I was seeing my colleague, and it's like, all right, I'll call him. And then he's like, all right, don't call the colleague.
Yeah, that was funny.
Weeks. And then it's like, turns out we're going to Mexico. But the thing that like cracked me up is like after she's already like, oh, Mexico, yay. He's like, I was going to, his his excuse for leaving was, I was going to go see my friend who knew about Mexico to ask him about what it's like to go to Mexico. Right. It's like you snuck away during your anniversary party to ask a friend about, like, hey, what do I do in Mexico?
Yeah, he's like,
what do we do there?
One of my doctor friends is from Mexico, so I had to go ask him now in the middle of our party, right now, when you bring the cake out. I have to leave and go talk to him.
I'm sorry,
I couldn't do it over the phone.
I couldn't have a single bite of 10 happy. You see, my Mexican friend called me on the phone and reminded me I had to ask him about Mexico, so I had to leave for 6 hours.
It's a little contrived, and it is very funny because it doesn't really make sense, but you just roll with it. It's fine.
It's his bad excuse, and it works because she's secretly desperate to, like, make this work.
Yeah. Which, that part isn't really gone over. I don't remember if it's in this scene, but they kind of, or maybe it's a later scene, but they kind of, they don't directly say it, but imply basically that he married her for
money,
for her dad's money.
Yeah, that's like the next morning, basically.
Okay, yeah, right. So what happens is they say, we're going to Acapulco. That's great. There's a fade to black where she propositions him and he makes a really funny face.
Do you have the GIF? Put the GIF on screen.
I'll put the GIF on screen. Hold on. Buy me time. I gotta go get it. Talk about something.
No, I just put it in general.
Let me grab
really
this.
Fucking funny.
Yeah, hold on. I loved this so much that I had to clip this out. I wish that there was a faster way to drag shit into.
They just drag shit to set the scene. They do this like whole scene where he's like, "Well, we're gonna go to Acapulco," and she's suddenly so happy, and then he's just like, "Well, all right, hun. I guess I'm just gonna step out for a while and go to the doghouse and read a book." And then she's just like, "No, fuck me."
Yeah.
And he just does this face.
There's his face. I put. Sorry for anybody listening to this instead of watching it, but just know that it is a very funny. It's like a half smile followed by like. I don't even know what emotion to call it. Like worry. He's like worried. And this happens right after his wife basically stops him from leaving the room and is like, come over here and fuck me. She's going to grind me to dust again tonight. Yeah, so you really they wanted to nail home the point that this guy does not give a fuck about his wife. Not even a little bit. He doesn't even want to have sex with her. That's how much he doesn't care. He's completely over it.
She's got this really great outfit on in this scene too, where she's got like this like weird nightgown that has like the sort of like necktie that like the old-timey sailors have, and then she's got these big ass sunglasses like she's like a fucking cyberpunk. It's great.
They're all the rage at the time.
Oh, and the other note I have written down about this scene is, why do they sleep in 2 different beds? Did you guys notice that? Was that just like a 70s thing?
Because it's almost the 70s and they're rich and they hate each other.
I guess so. I mean, that does just add to the whole, like, they really don't like each other, but it is very funny to see that. That feels, maybe more than anything else, that dates that and the fashion. But people have crazy hair in this episode.
Like, people in chat are bringing up it might be a Hays Code thing. I don't know if it's a Hays Code thing specifically.
I wonder.
It might be. I don't know. Admittedly, I don't know super much about the Hays Code.
No,
I wouldn't be surprised.
They probably just hate each other and have separate beds.
It was, you know, it was just cheaper to get 2 beds for the set than to get one big bed, I guess. They just knew a guy with 2 beds. But, so they go to sleep. They wake up the next morning. They're getting ready to leave.
No,
did I miss something?
Yeah, but before that, they do, like... Hang on, let me go through my notes real quick.
There's a scene where she goes to the mistress goes to the office and they're talking about their awesome murder plan.
That's right.
Important like bullet point note I wrote down. I wrote like 3 pages of notes. I did write down this specifically. Around 9 minutes in, he says "talk to a future predicted" with 3 question marks.
Okay, I have to imagine that's correct. I can't imagine anything else.
So the next scene is like he's in his office and the actress woman comes in, and they're like very much implying like, okay, aren't you got to get ready for your big role today, lady. It's real important. Don't disappoint me. Oh, I'll do my best. I'm just so nervous about it. And it's very clearly like they're talking about like some setup for the murder. Like eventually
Yes.
you realize it's, oh, okay, she's going to be like disguising as the wife in public somewhere for some reason. And so he's like, well, you just got to make sure to do your best to be just like her, and everyone will want to see what they want to see, so it'll be fine.
And he was right, to be honest. He wasn't wrong.
She like is super clearly like doesn't want to be doing this shit like at all. She is like super fucking nervous about it, and he's just like, no, it'll be fine, and then we'll be together forever, and it'll be all good. Don't worry about it.
You know, it's funny. I have a note written about this as well, and it just says, "Girl, this guy is not worth the stress. I don't know why you're making yourself go through this. This guy he's not even that attractive. He's like probably 50 years old. I don't understand what you see in this guy, but hey, you do you, I guess."
The note I took was, and I quote, "Dude fucking sucks," and then in all caps, "He hates you."
Yeah, it's true. But, you know, I think even the actress, what's that character's name? Hold on, what's her name?
I forget all the character names. I just write them down based on their roles.
Joan
Hudson is the character's name. In the first the first scene where they're at the pool house thing, I think she even says like, "I'm not very smart," or she doesn't exactly say that, but
right. There's like a scene specifically where she's like, "Well, why do you want me? I mean, I know I'm prettier than her, but surely you know how dumb I am." And he's just like, "Yeah, my ball and chain. She's fucking smart, but it's gonna fucking get her killed."
Yeah, they like go out of their way to have the character describe herself as not particularly intelligent. Yep. So
this dude is like a raging misogynist, but it's like the fucking 60s, so everyone's just like, that's just how cool suave dudes are.
Yeah, you know, he's just a rich guy who hates his wife and does whatever he wants to. They just kind of let him do whatever. He's got rich and powerful friends. Nobody's gonna look into this. It's all fine.
Nope.
So they go, right, I forgot about the scene in they go to his office. They kind of discuss the plan in vague terms. You don't know exactly what's going to happen, but you do kind of, you definitely get the idea that Joan is going to impersonate Miss Fleming in some way.
Yeah, because they're talking about like, here's a picture of her. Make sure you have the right makeup. You're going to get a wig from the costume department.
Which is very funny to think that the costume department just had a wig that happened to look exactly like this woman's normal hairstyle. But whatever. I guess it's LA. It's not the craziest thing to think that a movie studio, I guess they didn't have that many different hairs back then, perhaps. They just had that one in the storage.
They didn't mod in more hairstyles until like the 70s and 80s.
Right, exactly.
We didn't have Nexus mods yet. The best you had was like a fucking hot link on a forum, and half the time that shit's down.
So they discuss their plan, and then I believe it goes on to be the inciting incident where there's the scene is very good. It's very tense, mostly because you know this guy's gonna kill her. There's no doubt in your mind that this is the scene in which somebody is about to get murdered. Yes. But they do a good job of making you almost think that it's going to go wrong in some way. There's a lot of it's very funny because he puts on a pair of gloves, which makes sense.
I love the gloves.
Yeah.
You don't want fingerprints.
There's like this like really long shot where he's just like taking the gloves out and like unfolding them and like putting them slowly over his hand, and there's like the music choices. They have like, you know, they have the percussions going, and there's like the flute and the wood and the wind instruments just like fluttering like
oh yeah. The soundtrack for this episode is crazy. There's like instruments that I don't know what they are in the soundtrack for this episode.
See, the thing that makes me the fucking angriest about Columbo is throughout the entire run of the show, they have really fucking good original music, and as far as I know, it was never released fucking anywhere to listen to.
Yeah. Music's good. One thing I totally forgot about, like, I think I watched the first episode of this on Archive and it might have been like missing the very opening. I forgot about like the fucking James Bond ass title
It's
sequence.
so James Bond. It's great.
It's really
It
good.
is an awesome opening.
Because they haven't established like what they want like a Columbo opening.
Yeah, it's like
it's very different.
So it's like, fuck, what are we doing? We're doing like a police procedural. We're doing like a detective drama thing. All right, give him the Rorschach blots. Give him like the cool like dramatic jazz swing music.
Yeah,
it's great. It's so weird.
It's an awesome opening. I had that written down. I think I just wrote badass intro. That was my note for that.
I wrote really funny intro on some spy movie shit.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, I haven't seen the second pilot. We'll see that next episode, but it is so different than what the show becomes, you know? Yep. Like it's a very unique opening. This whole episode is the bones of Columbo, but there are some interesting deviations from what the normal formula became.
We'll get into more of it later, but I do think that like part of the lasting appeal of this episode specifically is like comparing and contrasting it to like the proper run of Columbo, where it's like it's less about like seeing how the sausage is made and more like seeing the early kind of like scrappy test sausages where they run the meat through the machine to make sure it's working and you get this like little piddly thing before they start making the proper ones afterwards. It's cool. It's cool. I want to eat a sausage now. I'm sorry. That's my analogy, I guess, but
it's definitely more...
I'm just really hungry right now.
I would say in general, this episode is like more intense than your average Columbo episode. They definitely, I mean, you know, it's not like it's a fucking goofball show 100% of the time after this pilot, but they definitely get a little bit, I don't know if lighthearted is the right word, but definitely less intense. This one's pretty intense.
Yes.
This is the dark Columbo episode.
Yeah, this is borders on dark Columbo for sure. So anyway, he puts on his gloves, his killing gloves, and there's a great, I love this scene just because it's almost like farcical in a way where his wife keeps turning to look at him and he keeps having to put his hands behind his back as if she would look at his gloves and be like, hey, wait a minute, those are your murdering gloves. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I like that it's like, do you want a drink? And he's like, no, put it down on the counter.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll drink it later.
She just knew.
People in chat calling them his Giallo gloves.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
Like, she would just see those gloves and inherently know, like, he is about to kill me. Like, that would be what clues her in. But anyway, he does end up killing her in a...
He gets his hand around her neck and, like, the music starts, like... It gets really intense. They add, like, a fucking siren going, like... Boo, boo.
Yeah.
It's also at this point, I would like to pivot this entire podcast to a segment I didn't tell my friends that I was going to be doing at all.
Okay.
Welcome to the Columbo Horse Watch.
Okay.
This is something I noticed going through like the entirety of the series. Every single episode, at some point, there's a horse. You can see a horse.
Okay.
Yes.
I believe you.
The reasoning I think is like really simple and straightforward, and was something that like my partner pointed out to me because she spends a lot of time doing like work related to like museums and like museum study and curation and stuff like that. And because of that, you kind of like brush elbows with a bunch of people that are, I don't have to put it politely, you get a bunch of rich assholes. And to a lot of these people, collecting like art of horses and like also dogs, I guess, is like a really antiquated like status symbol. Sort of thing. And so you see it a lot, especially in these like things set around like the 60s and 70s, and like it kind of tapers off a little more in the 80s where it's like, yeah, they have like a bunch of like busts of like horses or whatever. It's like, you know how some people are like really into like collecting like Roman statue replicas or busts, and some people are really into like Civil War portraits and reenactment stuff. It's that, but for horses.
That's very interesting. I'd never noticed.
17 minutes in, when he's like going right for the strangle, there's a small little table right next to their piano that they have, and there's a weird fucked up little horse guy on there.
Okay. Well, all right.
The only other horse I noticed in this episode is they have a chess set, but that's fucking nothing.
Right, that's
got 4 horses on it as is. Everyone's got that.
But it's 4 small horses. I think 1 big horse is better than 4 small horses, if you ask me. All right, well now we know.
I forgot to take a picture of the horse.
If you keep score at home, we got to figure out if there truly is at least 1 horse in every episode of Columbo.
There's at least 1 episode that I don't think has a horse at all, but it's in the fucking 90s run.
Oh, I see. Okay. Doesn't count.
Horses fell off.
That is true. Nobody talks about horses anymore.
Because like the 2 episodes I've seen from the 90s run are like, it's the new generation of young money, and they don't care about horses no more.
No. They left that in the past. That's my grandma's horse. That's not my horse. So we see it builds up. He's hiding his murder gloves. He gets his hands around her neck and he strangles her in what I want to call one of the more violent Columbo murders that I can remember. That's another thing that adds up to this episode being a little bit more intense than the average Columbo. Is like, yeah, this is a pretty violent murder. We're gonna see some really funny murders later on that I can remember. There's a lot of people getting hit on the head like a Three Stooges thing, but it kills them. I can't wait for those episodes. Sometimes they just didn't know how to kill a guy, so they're like, I don't know, just hit him on the head with a coffee mug and he dies for some reason.
There's a key difference between like murder mystery movie, like made with an express purpose of being like a tonally consistent movie versus this is now a series and we have to do this consistently.
Right.
Oh fuck, what do we do now? Drops a ball on his head really hard.
It is interesting to like
Slipped and
see
fell.
it and think about it like from that way, where it's like, yeah, we don't have the conventions of what Columbo is yet, which means on the one hand we haven't figured out what we want to do yet, but on the other hand we're fucking free, baby. We can do anything we want. Let's choke this woman out for 20 seconds.
Yeah, it's I mean, I wouldn't say it's drawn out, like it's not overly long,
but
it
linger
is
on it.
Yeah, they make you think about it. It's like, this was not a good thing, as if you needed a clue. This is bad that this is happening.
There's literal sirens going off in the music. She just fucking drops to the floor like a damn potato sack, and then he just goes on like nothing happens. The phone fucking rings, and he's like,
"Yeah, hey Barry. Nope, sorry. We're getting ready to leave. Yep, I'll tell the missus you say hi."
So oh, sorry, go ahead.
Something I notice about this fucking guy. And it's such a little thing, but it's part of why I think he's such a fucking dickhead. He never says bye to anyone on the goddamn phone. He just hangs that shit up.
Yeah, that's a good point.
What a jackass.
He's got no manners.
None at all.
So he then executes step 2 of his master murder plan, which is make his house appear as though it were robbed. He goes, he breaks a window to make it look like somebody broke in. He goes, grabs a bunch of jewelry, stuffs it all into a suitcase. He gets a box of silverware, which I thought was very quaint. I was like, oh, it's like actual silverware. That's fun. You don't see that anymore. That's... He puts all of these things in one of his suitcases, which he then takes to the airport. And at that point, he meets back up with Joan, and they are standing at the airport.
Before that.
Oh, did I miss something?
Before that, she like specifically comes into the apartment.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
And like gets an eyeful of this dead woman, and she's like freaking the fuck out, and he's just like,
"Why? What's wrong? This is what we said we were going to do."
Right. I totally forgot that. Don't worry about my dead wife. I told you I was going to do this. Why are you so upset? It's fine. Didn't I warn you that I was going to strangle her to death?
By the way, I know you just saw this fucking corpse in my room, but I need you to call the fucking laundromat and tell them they're going to clean some shit. Right.
He's basically just he's stacking alibis one on top of the other, you know, to create the perfect murder. He's making his house look robbed. He's like implying that, you know, his wife was alive in order to call somebody on the telephone. He's really, compared to other Columbo murderers, this guy definitely tried really hard. There's some murderers in Columbo that don't seem like they're trying very hard. This guy is putting his whole pussy in it.
Yup.
Putting his best foot forward and murdering his wife.
Exactly. You can tell this guy, he's been thinking about it for a while, and he's come up with every contingency possible, except for one which was really dumb, but we'll get to that later. So at that point, they go to the airport, they check their bags, they make a point. See, this is another thing that I like about Columbo. I feel like there's almost never, at least in the good episodes, there's almost never a red herring. They don't really plant false things. Like, if they show you something, it's almost always important, which I think is
In some
good.
way or another.
Yeah. And I think that is kind of written into the Columbo character, where he's so methodical that he doesn't leave any stone unturned. If it's even remotely possible that it could be important, then he goes out of his way to check it. So they
Very
really don't...
particular about literally anything that stands out.
Exactly. So they make a point of saying that, oh, his luggage that he's trying to bring on the plane is 13 pounds overweight. I don't remember if it was 13, but...
It was 9.
9 pounds. 9 pounds overweight. He charges it on his card. They get on the plane, and we get...
Maybe it was 13. I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
Man, airport security was real fucking lax back in the day, wasn't it? It's just like, yep, here's my heavy suitcase. It's jingling all weird.
That's no problem, sir. The problem is it's a little heavy.
It is. Whenever I was first watching through with my husband, that was like the one thing that I just like. I almost couldn't suspend my disbelief hard enough. Anytime they show an airport in this fucking show, it's like looking into another dimension. It's like
You just walk in and out of those.
You're smoking on the plane. You're smoking on the tarmac. You're just going in and out. There's like no security. I was like, oh my god, this is what the airport used to be like. That is insane.
Sir, would you like a complimentary shotgun before your flight?
Don't mind if I do.
Exactly. I was like, oh my gosh, it's so, out of everything, the airport scenes in this show might be the most jarring of all. They just let people do anything.
Or like anytime Peter Falk is just like chuffing a fat dart in a hospital.
Oh yeah, that's the other funny part. You know, it's funny. We're almost an hour in and we still haven't gotten to the point in the show where Columbo actually shows up.
There's a lot to chew on.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like we said, this episode does make you
This is
wait.
also like this one's a whole damn movie. The
exactly.
rest of them are all like slightly shorter.
Yeah.
Now, some of them still run kind of long, especially early on.
Yeah.
So they get on the plane. Dr. Fleming and Joan get on the plane and they stage an argument between each other. I guess maybe, I don't know if I'm looking too deep into his plan, but it's like, did he specifically attach himself to an actress because he thought he needed somebody who could act for this part of his plan? Like, do you think it was planned that much that he was like, I need to fuck an actress specifically?
I don't know if it's either that or he's like, all right, I got a hot actress. Well, I could use her to act for me when I kill my wife.
It's kind of like a chicken or the egg. I don't know how, like, it doesn't ever explain how much he had planned at which point, but I do think it would be funny if he was like, he had it so planned that he had to find an actress to cheat with. Like, that was important, is that it has to be an actress.
Either way, though, the fact that she is an actress is like why his plan works out in his head.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, this woman is fucking desperate. I don't mind breaching whatever code of ethics. He has an entire thing later in the episode about like, oh, well, ethics is relative, Lieutenant. So like, he's just like, this is fucking perfect for me. I hit the juck port 1 million. I can give her some mediocre dick and she'll do whatever I want.
That part, I'm like, girl, what do you see in this guy? He's obviously insane. He's crazy.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. So they stage an argument in which, they pretend to have a big fight, and Joan blows up. Joan pretending to be to be his wife,
Blow it
blows
up.
up,
Yeah.
storms off of the plane. This is another part that I found kind of, I wouldn't say it was difficult to suspend my disbelief, but I was like, if this was really happening, would you really just like get on a plane to Mexico and just be like, oh, fuck my bitch wife, you can stay here in LA? Like, you wouldn't go after her? Like, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But,
I think it's like,
you
and
know.
like he says later, it's like I wasn't expecting her to actually leave. So like,
Bro,
his
the plane was
story
taking
was
off.
like, yeah, his story was like, well, what could I do?
Exactly.
I guess I should just stay on the plane to Mexico and enjoy myself and go fishing.
Shucks, fellers, I thought she'd really come back, and I spent all this money on the tickets. I mean, I didn't want to go.
It was very funny. I just thought that was a silly little contrivance, but you know, it is what it is. It doesn't make no sense. It just doesn't make 100% sense.
Uh-huh.
So now we have Dr. Fleming on the plane to Mexico. We have Joan back in LA. Joan goes off and drops the she was given his wife's dress and gloves to wear to impersonate her, and then was told to go back and put them in the laundry, which was being taken that next day or something like that. Then we get, I believe after that, we get a scene of Dr. Fleming in Mexico on a lovely little boat with the cutest rear projection I've ever seen.
Yep.
It's so fucking funny. They have the like really tense scene of like the actress like running through the hallway trying to like shove the dress in the bag without getting caught. She forgets the gloves, she runs away. Immediate jump cut to like a fucking title card, like meanwhile in beautiful Acapulco.
Yep. And then he is on a quote unquote boat.
It's so quaint.
It's one of those things where you look at it and you're like,
harder to film back then.
oh yeah, no, I mean, here, I don't blame them at all. I'm not knocking them for it. It is just one of those times where you're like, this was meant to be viewed not on an HD television at 1080p. This illusion does not hold up to scrutiny at all, which I love. I love to see rear projections. They're so adorable.
It's cuteness.
He's on a fishing trip in Acapulco, and he tells the guy he's with, he's like, can you make me a sandwich? And the guy just goes and makes him a sandwich, leaving him alone.
My Mexican servant I have in Mexico.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what's going on there. I guess it was maybe his tour guide or his fishing guide or something. The scene opens and he's like throwing bait into the water or something. I was a little confused by that, but I haven't been fishing in Mexico before.
I don't think I've ever been fishing like ever. Maybe once.
It's nothing like they show on the TV where you go fishing and then empty out your entire luggage full of silverware into the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah,
which is what happens.
Usually, I'm led to believe there's a lot less like littering of valuable silver objects.
So part 4 or 5 of his plan is he has all of the things he stole from his own house and is dumping them in what I can assume is the Gulf of Mexico. Maybe it's the other side of Mexico. I don't know where Acapulco is,
He's just
to be
littering.
honest. So he dumps a bunch of shit into the ocean, pretty safely to assume that nobody will ever find it. And then he comes back. I guess he enjoys the rest of his lovely vacation after murdering his wife and flies back to LA.
What a wonderful time I spent clearing out my head. How wonderful. How lovely,
Yes.
sweet. I can't wait to go home to my bitch wife.
So in return, he does to a crime scene as he sees whenever he comes in and he sees the outline on the ground and he's looking around. He's looking extremely suspiciously, but here comes the big reveal. It's finally here. Columbo is in the episode.
Wouldn't you know it, ladies and gentlemen? It's Peter Falk playing Lieutenant Columbo.
He really just like saunters in. I forgot like how
it is.
It's like he just like fucking they have the shot. They have like a music sting that isn't like
That's very
it's heroic,
understated.
but it's not like triumphant. It's very
No.
understated. He just kind of like saunters in, looking down.
And it makes
He looks
sense
like-
because you don't really know who this guy is yet, right? I mean,
Right.
you probably understand that, okay, well, the show is named after him. Although I don't know. I guess was this even called
no,
Columbo?
This was just Prescription Murder.
It was just Prescription Murder, right? So like you don't even really know. So it's not like they build Columbo up to be like this triumphant reveal. Like here he is. It's Columbo. Everybody clap. But he's here, and gosh, I gotta say, jumping in season 2 of Columbo and then watching from there and then jumping backwards to season 1, Peter Falk has never looked better than this episode of Columbo. It's basically downhill after this.
He's just like, there's a disheveled slider that they keep pulling further and further and further, and this is the best he looks.
It's so great because like this is like they figured out what Columbo is in terms of like how he acts as like a narrative foil to the villain, but they don't really know yet who
he is as a
Columbo
person.
Right. They haven't established him as a character yet because this is the first fucking thing they're doing with him. So he's just like, they play it very straight, like especially at the beginning. He's just like, all right, he's a normal police detective. He's well put together. He's got like a suit on. It's well tailored. He's carrying a coat with him. His hair is neatly styled and cut short. They got a bunch of makeup up on Peter Falk so that he looks like baby-faced and blooming.
Legitimately, the most jarring part to me was seeing him walk in and his raincoat is on his arm and not on his back. I was like, wow, that's great. That is very unusual. You almost never, like, from that point forward, you almost never see this character without that coat on.
Yep.
That was the most jarring part to me.
They play him like super straight too, at least like right at the start, like this, where he's like he's very like generic police officer. He's a little hard-assed. He's like very like blunt and to the point. He's not really super affable or like very personable in this scene at the very least. He's just like, yep, I'm the detective. There's been a murder. We're investigating it.
That's that, and that right there, that is I would say this is basically the end of Act 1. This is sort of the end of the first act twist where he comes back, Dr. Fleming comes back, Columbo is introduced, they have a short interchange, and Columbo says something along the lines of, well, it's, you know, it's a good thing it wasn't worse, because you find out that Miss Fleming is not dead at all. In fact, she is alive.
It specifically, he says someone tried to kill your wife.
Right.
And then there's like this shot of him turning around going,
tried
to kill my wife? And he's like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Mr. Fleming. This is Markiplier. Your wife's in a coma.
Yeah. That is also a kind of a running thing with Columbo murderers, is they don't usually do a great job of making themselves not seem suspicious. They always seem to react very suspiciously to any information involving a murderer of a close friend or relative or spouse. They're always just like, oh, what a shame that they died. Oh, well, see you later. Like,
anyway, bye.
Yeah. So
that's too bad. I'm just gonna go over here and process it because it's such a shock and it hasn't really clicked yet. But by the way, you were relieved of duty. You can go now.
You can go. I'm good. I don't need to sit down.
I don't want to talk to anyone, so you can stand outside my door and make sure no one comes to talks to me. Bye.
Yep.
One thing I wanted to say, just like, just before we move on from Columbo introduction, it is like really funny seeing like how straightforward his introduction is here and how his behavior is, because they haven't established it yet. Like in like a season and a half, he's showing up like eating hard-boiled eggs on a crime scene and dropping shells on the ground. It's fucking awesome.
Oh man,
there's like a conspicuous giant stain on like half of his coat. There's like an entire 10 minutes dedicated to him explaining the stain to his coworkers.
Yep.
I love that version of Columbo because they really play up the fact that he's just this kind of like somewhat gross, extremely disheveled human. And like everyone not involved with the police department is like, who the fuck is this guy? And everyone in the police department's like, he's like one of the best detectives ever. Like, we just gotta let him do that.
Yeah, so something I really like about how they portray Columbo just in general is that he does very much like treat it like a job, right? Like he's just showing up to the crime scene. It's like, I'm doing my job. Like, I've seen a dead body before. It's not, he doesn't He doesn't even barely spend any time like being like, oh, it's so sad what happened. He's like, no, I'm here to find the murderer. Like anything that isn't involved with that, I don't give a fuck. Like we gotta get this into a tight 90. Let's keep this plot rolling. So at that point, it's revealed that Miss Fleming is not dead, but she is in a coma. And I didn't write down the exact lines, but I love the interchange here between Fleming and Columbo, where like Columbo is slowly drip feeding information to Fleming, which is part of his MO. That he does that a lot. He never reveals more than he feels like he has to. And so Fleming is here like trying to react in what I guess he believes is a realistic way to the increasing information, because he thought his wife was dead. His wife's not dead. She's alive. He's like, oh fuck, that's bad. He's instantly like, did she say anything?
Did she?
and then Columbo's like, well, no, she's in a coma. And he's like, oh, that's good. I mean, well, it's good she's not dead, I guess. So there's a great, I love, like, you can tell in this episode, they do such a good job of writing like dry humor, you know?
Yeah.
They love that.
It's supposed, like, it's not accidentally funny. It's very purposefully supposed to be comic, but not in like the laugh track sort of way. It's very dry humor, which I appreciate a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So then they go off to the hospital after after that little exchange. At that point,
it's like a big reminder at the hospital of like, yeah, by the way, Dr. Fleming has all these like rich and powerful friends, like, in the police precinct and like working at the hospital. So he's like trying to pull strings, like immediately like, all right, I want to see my wife. I want to see her alone. By the way, this is my buddy who like works for the police, Detective Columbo. This is my police buddy. And who's immediately just like putting pressure on Columbo, like, yep, let's get this shit solved quick, buddy. This will be a real feather in your cap.
Yeah. I think that was like was that like a DA or somebody?
Yeah, he was like a DA or an attorney.
He was a DA, so somebody with some amount of pull, which I also thought that was an interesting departure from later Columbo episodes. Is like, maybe I'm misremembering like a place here or there, but I feel like after this episode, you almost never hear about Columbo's bosses ever. Like,
it like comes up very rarely.
Very rarely. It almost like it's more like this later on in the series, but at a certain point, you kind of get the feeling that Columbo may not even be a person or a human. He's more of like a spirit. Like a spirit of justice that haunts rich people that kill guys. Like, it almost feels like he's not of this world. You don't get so much of that in this episode. It's much more grounded.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a conversation with some random people at the hospital. Basically, kind of just establishing that there's definitely reason for Columbo to be suspicious of Fleming, but also at the same time, it's not going to be easy. They kind of build Fleming up to, have powerful friends and stuff like that. They eventually make it to the hospital room where, or outside the hospital room where Miss Fleming is being held. And a doctor comes out and he's like, I'm sorry, but she's dead. And once again, Fleming's first thing is like, did she say anything before she died? He's really making sure. And then there's a great line where the doctor says, well, she only said one thing before she died, and you'll be happy to know that it was your name.
If it's any consolation, she said your name.
She said your name before she died.
It's like only everyone... Which is such a fucking funny thing to say. He's like so clueless, but you see Columbo's face and like he's the only one who like, hold on, wait a minute.
It's the lead up to that whole thing is like so fucking funny too, because they're like they're at the desk and they're like, all right, can we go up and see my wife? Oh no, sorry, we're not letting anyone in. Oh, but I can pull some strings. Oh, okay, let's go. Columbo has to come because he has to tell the cop at the door that we can go in. And they go to the door, and the cop is like, "No, sorry, you can't go in. She's conscious now. She's okay."
Oh, right,
and the
yes.
door
Talking to the
immediately
doctor.
opens up, and the doctor comes out and is like, "Nope, she fucking died."
Yep.
Yeah.
She said one person's name and then died. And that was it.
Yep. It's funny because it's like she's awake now and talking to the doctor, and then he just starts like pacing like really nervously, and there's like literally a reaction shot of Columbo like looking at him just to like drive the point home of him like acting so unnaturally at like, yeah, it turns out your wife is awake and talking to a doctor right now. Like any human being who did not kill their wife would like, oh, thank God, like there's a faint glimmer of hope. There's something there, and he's just like pacing like, oh fuck, oh fuck,
man,
oh
geez, oh man, I wish I could be in there right now. Oh man.
They very easily established that that Columbo is instantly suspicious, which is pretty much par for the course. Columbo is always instantly suspicious of the right person, which it ties back into why I'm pretty sure he watches the intros along with the along with the viewer. But they actually explain why, and I think it's the scene right before they go up to the hospital room where he's talking to the DA, and he's basically saying, I thought it was weird. I was in this guy's house before him. He comes back home from a trip and doesn't even say anything. You know, so like, oh, well, he wasn't even expecting anybody to be there or something. So it's not like it's... Columbo has a reason to suspect him, and then that's only, you know, doubled and tripled down whenever he's acting like a fucking weirdo around the death of his... The comatose nature and then later death of his wife, where he's just acting like a little freak about it.
Oh, speaking of wife, this scene is also like the first mention of Mrs. Columbo.
Oh yeah, good point.
Where he's like, oh, I gotta borrow a fucking pen from you, man. I lost my pen. My wife, every morning when I leave the house, she gives me a pencil and I always lose it.
Yeah, when he's saying like, it was weird that he didn't like call out to his wife when he gets home. Like when I get home, I'm like, honey, I'm home, or are you there, or something like that. You know?
Yeah. Borrowing a pen is one of Columbo's famous tricks. He's always borrowing pens.
People's pens.
He's always borrowing things, and it's actually, I mean, it's very clever, right? Because the reason that he shows back up, I think it's at his office, right?
Yeah, and he's like, I gotta give you your pen back, sir.
Exactly. So he basically he borrows the pen so that he has an excuse to come back later and then continue to bother this guy, so that he can quote return his pen.
Right before we get like the pen returning bit too, there's this one scene where like the psych is just like walking through like a park or something, and they have like, I don't know if they're selling
he's like
art,
looking at
or
art.
they just have like a bunch of art set up, and there's this one really good shot of this one like work of art that just has like a broken mirror in it, and Columbo just like comes into frame of the mirror, and like there's this giant like crack all throughout it that's like specifically over his eye. I don't know if it's like specifically the glass eye that Peter Falk famously like had a glass eye because he lost his other eye when he was like quite young, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's just like his face. The mirror shot is really weird. It's just like it's one of those things that's like there's not really like a tonal or imperative reason for it. It's just kind of, it's like a filmmaking style of the time. It's just very like, it's there to look cool.
Looks cool.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, they have this like cool mirror thing. I guess they're gonna bring in like the psych and have him show up in the mirror shot to show like, yeah, he's like kind of this weird broken man like glancing at his own reflection and like feeling like he's like falling apart because his perfect plan is like starting to fray. No, it's just Columbo in the shot because he looks cool.
It is a great shot.
They're going for a lot of Hitchcock stuff. It's good.
I think it is. I'm looking through the episode. It is his fake eye also. So perhaps a nod to that. I mean,
it's neat.
Yeah, Columbo, Peter Falk's glass eye is definitely one of the, like not a defining feature of Columbo, but it definitely informs like his facial acting in a way that it's hard
part of
to.
Why he has the sort of like eyebrow squints and hunches that he does is because of that.
And it's great. So they talk at the park. I believe they go to his office. And is this the elf scene or is that the later one? I know they talk in the
later.
office
The elf
twice.
scene is much later.
Okay, so they kind of just have a back and forth in Dr. Fleming's office, kind of just spending time breaking down. Like, you know, Columbo's doing his Columbo thing. This is what the show is, right? The show is mostly Columbo talking to the murderer and trying to trick them, basically. Just trying to find enough discrepancies to build a case against them. And I think
feels more like Columbo in that specific office scene because he's like kind of slouched over more. He's lumbering around the space. He's like bringing up all these anecdotes. There's another mention of his wife where he's like, oh yeah, you know, I keep losing things all the time. My wife, she tells me I ought to have strings on all 10 of my fingers so I don't lose them.
I think he brings up that he has a sister with an ugly bench or something. Is that
or like
it's
a
like
cousin,
a coffee table.
Or a cousin with
like
an
a
ugly
shitty looking coffee table, and the coffee table broke like the husband.
Yeah, he's also wearing his coat. He's in full Columbo regalia. He's chomping a cigar.
He put the coat on and gained the memories.
Exactly. He felt it. He felt the ability to solve the case flow through him as he did that. So in this scene, Columbo brings up the overweight luggage as a sticking point, saying, we checked your records, like, oh, the airlines all keep track of all this stuff. I saw that your luggage was 13 pounds overweight when you left, but then I think he says specifically you lost 9 pounds from leaving to arriving. And I thought this was maybe the most flimsy excuse that this guy gives, which is he's like, oh, yes, I just wanted to catch up on my reading. You know, I brought a bunch of medical journals and stuff. And Columbo's like,
them behind.
And Columbo's like, and then you just left them there? And he just goes, yes. Like, it's just like, yep, I just left them there.
The flimsier part, I mean, he was actually right in that, like, and you just left them there. And he's like, yeah, why would I bring them back? Like, they're just like newspapers essentially, right? So it's like you wouldn't bring it. The more skeptical part is like he literally says is like, and you think there was 9 pounds worth of them? Like you brought like, and then it's not unreasonable to suggest, but it's like you 9 brought 9
pounds is a lot.
I love that his defense for that too is just him going, "Yep, I mean there's a 9 pound discrepancy."
I mean, like it's funny because it's like it's one of those things that like Columbo is clearly on the right track and he's like doing it, but the murderer is also doing a pretty good job of like keeping pace with saying the right thing. It's just like, it's like, I mean, why else would it be?
It had
like,
to
what
have
else
been
could, what else could it be, right? Like, you know, it's not like it was silverware or something like that. Like,
he's not being like overly defensive about it. He's just like, I brought some shit. I guess it must have been that much. I don't really know.
And that's honestly what makes this guy a more clever murderer than a lot of the murderers in Columbo, because normally whenever Columbo comes at somebody with a discrepancy, they are very quick to come up with a weird story that tries to explain away whatever Columbo is bringing up, which is where the title of this podcast comes from. Because Columbo will say, what about this and this and this? And then the murderer will be like, oh, you know what? What if it was? And then they say something crazy. And then Columbo just goes, well, that must explain it.
Well, that explains it.
It's like, oh, you're right. That's gotta be what it is. Thanks for your time.
That's kind of a code
that makes
word.
A lot of sense today.
It's a code phrase for Columbo is like, that's bullshit and you're dumb, but I'm gonna drop it for now until I have better evidence. I think that's another thing that makes this show very fun is that like Columbo is not a dirty cop. Well, there are some moments that we'll get into in later episodes, but he's very by the books in that like he needs hard evidence, right? He's not about to just like, obviously he knows this guy murdered his wife. The murderer knows that Columbo knows that he murdered his wife, but they both know that he can't arrest him without actual proof. And that's pervasive throughout every episode is like Columbo needs hard proof of a murder before he does anything.
His preternatural detective instinct has told him right off the bat, this is the guy, but now he just needs to
it's all about slowly tightening the noose, trying to get the the loose ends tied up. And yeah, I mean, it's, like I said, what can I say? This show's great. That's why we're doing a podcast about it.
I feel like he's kind of a dickhead about being a cop in this episode specifically, though.
Yeah, a little bit.
We get to it later.
Yeah, this episode has some.
It is because he has
stuff.
to be, right? It's
Right.
like, because in this case, the murderer is actually like very, very good at covering his tracks, and it's like he always aims for the weakest link, and in this case, the weakest link is like a hapless woman.
Right. So the first, I mean, the most of the second act really is just Columbo trying
the psychiatrist.
He's trying to find the inn, right? He's trying to figure out what part of this guy's story doesn't add up. But honestly, every place he turns, Fleming has kind of already figured it out. There's a brief moment where it's revealed that that Joan forgot to put the gloves in the laundry. She brought the dress back, but not the gloves. And that's something that Columbo keeps asking about. And it's kind of putting pressure on Fleming to find the gloves, essentially, or you know, make it make
like,
sense.
Columbo's like, what happened to the dress and the gloves, sir? We don't know what happened. That's funny. You know, that's funny. Maybe I can like come to your house later and we can look for it together. Wouldn't that be nice, sir? And he's like, oh shit, fine. How about this time? And so specifically before that time, he runs home and he calls the actress over. And so it's like, all right, what'd you do with the fucking gloves? And she's like, oh shit, I forgot the gloves. I was panicking. There was a fucking dead woman I saw that night. I wasn't in the best state of mind, so I didn't put them in the bag. And he's like, well, I'll just have to puppet you around some more to make sure you do things my way, just right. And he's like mixing her a fucking drink. He's like talking like, all right, well, we'll hide the gloves somewhere and then they'll be easy to find for Mr. Columbo later. Columbo starts fiddling at the door, trying to break in like someone's cat, like going to someone else's house.
That is also I would say that's an unusual Columbo tactic to just like get the keys to somebody's house and try and get inside of their house, which to be fair,
it's funny because fucking Fleming is like, bro, you don't have a fucking warrant, and Columbo just kind of goes, it's fine though. You said I could come over.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's just like, yeah, I guess.
His excuse is like, well, you invited me over later tonight or something like that, and it's like, yeah, bro, but like, that's not how the law works.
Columbo just kind of goes, no, it's okay. And Fleming is like, I guess it's okay. And he has to like hide the woman in the back room and position himself super awkwardly around the bar so that you can't see the two drinks that he mixed.
Oh yeah, that was great when he's like looking at the gloves and then he sees the drink and there's the shot of him like, oh fuck it. He like conspicuously walks over, leans on the counter like
Yes, this was another scene that like borders on like a farcical kind of.
It's really good.
It felt like a Three Stooges bit.
This guy's going around. He's trying to hide evidence that there is another person there. I think they walk into like, or Joan is hiding in the bedroom. She has to go hide in the bathroom or something, or maybe I think it's that Columbo gets interrupted because there's a knock at the door and a guy from the laundromat shows up, and he has the blue dress that was, unaccounted for.
And like specifically, Columbo is like, well, let's just go around your house and look around a little. Maybe we can find the dress. If you found the gloves, surely we'll find the dress. And he's just like being super sketchy, like, no, I don't
want to look around all of my things.
Maybe we could do something else. And then when the door knocks, he's like, Detective, I don't want to answer the door. I'm feeling really sad about my dead wife. Can you get it for me?
Yeah, that was funny.
And that's when they like show off the dress, and he's like, wow, what a coincidence that both the gloves and the dress have shown up now. I guess this was a phenomenal waste of time for all of us.
Yeah.
Wow, weird.
It is funny that like, because in the scene where they realize that they forgot the gloves, it's great because it's like a ultra honeypot on Columbo's part in that like when they're talking about it, she says correctly, why don't we just throw the gloves away? And he's like, I want him to find it because it'll clear up our alibi. But what he was actually doing was trying to create another contrivance for him to address so that he could further break them down. So like in doing so, just like created more circumstances for him to fucking out himself, which is great.
Mm-hmm. I also really like the bit where like this woman is over and she's stressed out of her fucking mind because she's an accomplice to a murder, and this guy is basically just like, now kitten, you fucked up real fucking bad and you made a real mess of things, but I'm not mad. I'm definitely not mad at you. I don't hate you. I'm not mad at you.
I love you very much. Get in my bedroom and hide.
Get in the bathroom, stake out in there, don't move or make a sound ever.
And then we get so that scene ends with Columbo getting a phone call, which is weird. Like, why did they call Fleming?
I guess because he told the
I guess
office,
he told the
hey,
police
boys, I'm gonna
officer,
go down to Fleming's place.
This is a recurring thing in Columbo for a while. It's like,
well, it's
it makes more sense.
Cell phones, right?
This makes more sense in the era of landlines, where like getting a phone call didn't just mean this person is trying to reach me directly. It means someone called the number to this location. They don't really know who's on the other side, but like I have a pretty good idea. Like, this is your house. I know that someone is over at your house. So there's all these scenes where Columbo sets up these instances like, all right, I want you to call me. I'm gonna be in the office at this person's house. So call their number if you want to reach me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is. But besides the airports, I think the usage of phones is maybe the most dated other thing about Columbo is the way that people operate around phones. Many shots in Columbo of people dialing phones, using phones, getting phone calls, people calling bars looking for a specific person. It's basically is just not how the world operates anymore and never will again. It is a truly fascinating window into about 50 years ago.
How far we have moved on in this time.
So anyway, so Columbo gets a phone call at the guy's house, and they say, we got a confession from somebody.
Yep.
A guy just admitted to killing your wife. How convenient is that?
It's like, oh, well,
Good
that's
news.
great.
We got the guy who did it, sir.
And then he leaves, and then we go to a police interrogation room where there is a guy named Jimmy, something like that. Some guy, Tommy. And
Tommy Tallarico.
And it's basically this guy who we've never seen before this scene going over.
It's famous Tommy, you know him.
Yes. Going over how he murdered Miss Fleming, quote unquote.
Classic Tommy, always doing that shit.
And this is all basically, I mean, they do leave it like ambiguous, but it's sort of implied potentially that Columbo has also set this entire scenario up as another way to try and get information. He does that a lot. Columbo is like a showman. He loves to concoct scenarios. Yes. It's one of the best parts of the show.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's even like goes so far as to almost feel like entrapment, but you know, it depends on the episode.
It pretty much is in some cases, but it's really good.
Or not entrapment specifically, but definitely there are so many scenarios in Columbo where you are just yelling at the screen like, just ask for a lawyer. Like, why are you still talking to this guy? You don't have to talk to this guy. But I mean, the TV show couldn't happen if it wasn't for that. But
they bring this guy over and he's like telling them all this info, and it's like, oh, all the info he's giving them is like the stuff that would be like readily available, like in the papers or like public reports or whatever. And all the stuff he's like, why are you asking me? I fucking did it, didn't I? All the stuff he's dodgy on is like the stuff that he wouldn't know because he didn't do it. And they're like, all right, Tommy, you're free to go. And it's like immediately like made it clear that like, oh, okay, Columbo just brought the psych here to see like how he would react to this confession scene. and he's just like, well, I don't believe any of the stuff that he said. And Columbo's like, I also don't believe it. This guy is like a known entity. He was discharged from the army. He's unstable. He'll just come in and like confess things sometimes.
Yeah.
And so the psych is like, you're trying to force me into a damn gotcha, aren't you?
Yeah,
you brought me here to see how I'd react because you think I would like snap, or you think that I would imply that I hired him to do it or something like that. They bring up that Mrs. Columbo is looking for a vacation spot to go fishing in.
Oh, yeah.
And that segues specifically into Columbo being like, you like to fish, sir? You like going fishing? You went fishing on your trip? Wouldn't it be really funny if you dumped a bunch of garbage into the ocean? Did you take all your luggage with you when you went fishing, sir?
Columbo says, like, I can't believe, did you know people just throw things off boats all the time? I just thought that was interesting.
I thought that was interesting.
Just thought that was interesting, sir.
Yeah, this whole scene is basically Columbo setting up a trap and unsuccessfully
to see like how he would squirm.
Yeah, so I mean he definitely gets information from it, but it is sort of it's almost like a confirmation that like this Fleming guy is not too good, but definitely good, right? Like
he's very good.
He did not take the bait. So many Columbo villains in the future would have just taken this bait, and this would have been when the episode ends.
There's this like exchange right at the end of that scene where he's just like, Columbo, do you think I did it? And he's just like, well, no, sir. You were out of town, sir.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, I know you didn't pay off Tommy, sir. And it immediately leads into him like chasing down his fucking DA friend and being like, I need you to get Columbo off the case now.
Yeah. So Fleming confronts the DA guy and basically says like, This Columbo guy is pissing me off. He keeps coming up and bothering me, and I need you to get him off my back. Which, you know, he does basically, or at least appears to at first. Fleming's ploy works, pulls a few strings, and then I think what happens immediately after that is right after getting taken off the case, Columbo shows up at Fleming's office to be like, well, I got taken off the case, which
just wanted you to know that.
Just wanted you to know, which then he segues into, can you become my psychiatrist?
Yep.
Which is very funny. He's like, oh, I don't know. Everybody tells me that I don't trust people enough. Can you psychoanalyze me?
This is the scene where the psych calls him a sly little elf
that
should be sitting under his own toadstool.
Yes, that I really love this scene. This scene to me, I mean, I don't know even exactly what I mean by this, but this feels like a Star Trek scene to me. I don't even know what I mean by that. It's like the concept of two people fighting with words, right? Like they're basically battling. They're having a mental battle in this scene, like a back and forth, and it's very funny that in this scene they kind of have Fleming explain what the show Columbo is.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think this scene is like super fucking smart for a pilot. And it's like why like the framing device of like, yeah, the main villain is a psychiatrist who like analyzes people and understands how and why they like work and think the way they do is perfect for this like pilot episode, because it's like, all right, we have this foil whose entire role, aside from his narrative role of being the villain and guy who fucks up and gets caught, is he's here to explain what Columbo is and why Columbo is.
Yeah.
So that we can establish that, so that we can understand the hook of, oh, this is why this format is interesting. This is why Columbo as a character and how he works is interesting. This is why this is a compelling thing that we can then make more episodes of and make more things with in the future. Because this is the crux of what it is. Here's this guy who wanders in, super disarming, super personable, that like wears down, makes you like drop your armor, disarms you, makes you think that everything is okay, and you start slipping up in tiny little ways that he latches onto like a fucking lamprey and never lets go of, and you're like, oh fuck, what's the deal with this guy? And just starts chipping you down more and more and more, piece by piece, until there's nothing left of you, and he's got you in his grasp.
It's a great character deconstruction of Columbo in the very first, before they even knew what it was. Like, it's like, They already knew what this character was. He walks into the room and Fleming is like, you pretend to be stupid, but you're actually smart. That's the whole character. It's a perfect encapsulation. And the writing in this scene is really good. I love the dialogue between, I mean, this episode is like, if I had to rate this episode, I mean, this would be like, I mean, at least like an 8. Like, you know, this is a great episode of Columbo. There's some parts later on that are a little weird, but we're getting to those.
It's such a good scene, though.
Yeah, this scene is great, and yeah, most of all because he does call Columbo a little elf, which I thought was very funny.
Sit under your mushroom, boy.
He gets his very own toadstool. I was like thinking about that line hours after I had finished watching this episode. I was like, what did he mean by that?
It's great also because like his reaction to that is like very like muted. Like he's clearly like, oh, you know, like this guy's kind of pulling me around, but also it's like he kind of looks down in such a demure way that it could almost be interpreted as like, oh, you don't mean that. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you're just saying that.
You really think so? Oh, geez.
It's specifically the part where he says you should be a little elf under your very own toadstool. Which in my head implies that this guy has information about elves where they normally have to share toadstools for some reason. But Columbo is such a good elf that he gets his own toadstool.
No, he's just sad that Columbo's missing from his toadstool that he deserves.
I know.
He's too busy in his office.
I can't interpret that line any way other than this guy having special information about elves that nobody else has.
There's a scene right after the credits that no one gets to watch because the show is over where Dr. Fleming is shouting like, wait, if you book me, you'll never know the gnomish secret.
Yeah.
It's so sad. They never know.
You're a sly little elf. So
it's also really funny that they have this like really smart and interesting like deconstruction of like, you know, what Columbo is and how he operates. And it's immediately followed by like, all right, Doc, well, do you think you could help me psychoanalyze, let's just say a hypothetical guy who would plan out a murder super far in advance? And the psych is just like, yup, I bet he's really smart and really in control and he's not emotionally driven at all. And by the way, he has a really good education and he's courageous and morals are all relative anyways.
Yeah.
Killing is repulsive to me. And he's really sane. He's really not insane. He's really in control of himself and you're never going to catch him.
He probably has a great office.
Yeah, this is very much Fleming just being like, you're never going to get me. Like I can sit here in this room and do everything up until admit that I murdered my wife and you're still not going to be able to get me. Like
the way they play this bit off specifically feels like fucking cartoonish to me. I'm endeared by it, but it's a little bit like, come on.
It's a bit much. I mean, yeah, it really does come down to Columbo saying, just fucking admit it. And he's saying like, no, I'm not going to admit it because you can't prove it. And that's that. And at that point, I think Columbo actually kind of agrees. He's like, you're right. Your alibi is too airtight. I don't have any more ammo to use against you. Like you've tied up all of your loose ends, but there's one thing that he didn't do, and that was tie up the loose ends with his accomplice, who
I do like the last little line that Columbo has before the psych is just like, yup, let's just be good buddies and never talk to each other again. Here's some booze. Where when he's like, yeah, you'll simply never catch him because he's too good at what he did. Columbo just goes like, yup.
Yeah.
He's a real mastermind, all right, but here's the thing. He only ever had to do this once.
That's
I do this for a living.
That was that is a very good exchange that they have. And Fleming basically leaves Columbo. He's like, yeah, search my office, whatever. He's so confident that Columbo will never get him. He's straight up just like, you can literally, I'm going to leave my door unlocked. Go ahead, search my office as much as you want. Just make sure to turn the lights off whenever you go.
Take all my damn booze. Just don't leave the power running, man. It's the 60s.
Yeah.
There's a great line in a later episode of Columbo that I think about as like one of the best, like I'm not sure if I should save it, but it's like it's the Leonard Nimoy episode, which is like
That's in
That
season
was-
2.
It's in
I
season
think.
2.
I'm
Yeah.
I'll just wait
liking
till we
that
get.
episode.
I'll just wait till we get to that one. But I
Okay.
yeah.
So at this point, Columbo goes and gets a popsicle and goes and talks to Joan, who he finds on a movie set. It's very important that he has a popsicle for some reason.
It's the scene where the directors and the writers and like the prop guys are like, wait, shit, we have an actress character. Quick, we need to use all of the extra lots that NBC has access to, just have them all laid out, get every extra we have, dress them up in all of the cultural stereotype costumes that we have in the back room somewhere.
Yep.
Just have them wandering around. We're filming some shit. We got a cowboy, we got a geisha, we got a white man, Lawrence of Arabia type costume.
There's a bunch
on.
of like Greek and Roman dressed extras. You do notice that Columbo loves to investigate things on a set where they already happen to be filming something, I guess because it's very easy to film a TV show.
It's smart.
In a place where you're already filming things.
You're already shooting stuff in like studios and something like that. You might as well just bring the cameras outside just to do a scene here.
It like kind of reminds me of like what like fucking Star Trek TOS would sometimes do, where it's like, all right, we have this set we used for some other fucking thing. Fuck it, let's bring it in. They go to an alien planet that's just like the evil castle.
They go to the alien planet and it's the Wild West for some reason.
Yep.
We
go to the alien planet. It's just like 1960s New York, but it's only kids because we had a bunch of child actors on set today.
It's weird when they go to the planet that looks exactly like downtown Burbank, you know, just like
This is weird. This entire TOS episode is set on the planet that looks exactly like my basement.
So
how'd they get there?
So Columbo takes Joan into like an interior set place, and I would say this scene specifically is maybe the one thing in this episode that is the least Columbo.
This is Dark Columbo.
This is Dark Columbo. We get full,
Columbo anger moments.
We get full Dark Columbo in this scene where he is just grilling Joan because at this point he knows that Fleming is not going to lead anywhere, and the only other thing he has to go off of is he is aware that he had to have an accomplice, right? Because somebody had been pretending to be Miss Fleming on the airplane and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. He met Joan in Mr. Fleming's
in the office once,
in his office once, and just kind of like just barely met her, said like three things to her, and then went away. But that was enough for him to go off.
She was like, "Sorry, what's your name?" And then she like hesitates weirdly. Then he's like, "Oh, okay, sorry to bother you," and immediately makes a note of like, "That's weird."
Exactly. So this whole scene is him just grilling the fuck out of her to the point where he is like shouting, he's yelling
at her,
he is grabbing her, he's like, "You're gonna go to fucking prison! You're gonna go to fucking prison right now!" Like he's going
her
full.
Face. He's like red faced, sweating and yelling, and she's like breaking down.
Yeah, and she is like sobbing. She is like on the verge of a mental breakdown. Remember that this character is in this story because she was going to a psychiatrist in the first place. Like, she is not in a good state, and Columbo is like. He's fucking throwing everything at her.
He knows that she has an anxiety disorder and is taking advantage of it.
Yeah.
This is like one of the few times where Columbo is played like an American police officer.
Yeah. This is, I will say, I can't think of another scene where Columbo does anything close to this. Like, this is the one time I can think of. I mean, I can't remember every single episode, but this is definitely a Dark Columbo moment. He's telling her, like, no matter what, until I get a confession, I am going to make your life miserable. I am going to follow you around. I am going
to the ends of the earth.
I'm going to chase you down. You are never going to have another moment's peace. I'm going to have police officers follow you, and I'm just going to ruin your life. Okay, bye. Have a good day.
It's just like it's another act because it's like he's
not like pretending to be this.
He's like putting police outside of her apartment to put the screws to her and like make her call Fleming to like get closer to it. But he does like, I think there are a couple. I just remember there's this one like we've surely posted it in our Discord and joked about it before, but there's this like one YouTube video that's like Columbo's best anger moments, or like best of angry Columbo rage moments.
Unleashed.
Yeah. And like one of them is I think it's also the Leonard Nimoy episode where it's like he's like Columbo's like, you fucking did it and I'm gonna get you, and he's like, I don't know what you're fucking talking, and like maybe it's not, I don't know, but like he like slams the desk and suddenly gets like really serious. It's like you are joking about a human life here and I'm gonna fucking get you for it. Like he does actually get like legitimately mad, but this one it feels like he's just sort of doing it as like a police tactic to just like make her upset.
It's less like you've done like a horrible breach of ethics and I have to bring you to justice, and more like, well, why do you need a lawyer if you're innocent? By the way, we're gonna be gang stalking you for months.
Yeah. it's there are definitely moments in the show where Columbo gets mad at the murderer. I can think of a few episodes where Columbo actually like says to the murderer's face, like, I don't fucking like you and I'm gonna make you go to prison because you killed somebody. But this is like the only time where like it's pretty obvious that this woman didn't want to go along with this scheme really, and was just kind of like strong-armed into it. Columbo doesn't normally, like, Columbo's a guy with a good heart, right? Like he can see the goodness and badness in people's souls, like he's got a third eye for justice. This is like the one time where he kind of takes somebody who's already down and like tries to specifically break them.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm getting to you because you're vulnerable and you're the connection to the guy I'm trying to get.
Yep. So we get that scene, which is, I mean, it's a well acted scene. It's just extremely, I wouldn't say it's extremely out of character, but it is like, he doesn't really do that again.
It's retroactively out of character.
It's retroactively out of character.
There's two things from that scene that stick out to me, aside from like the stuff we've already talked about. The first one is there's this shot that I really like, where like it's like this like set for whatever the fuck they're filming, and there's like all these big like pillars there. And there's this like she's trying to walk away, and like her back is facing the camera.
Yeah.
And she's like enclosed, like juxtaposed between like two of the pillars that are like separating her from Columbo. And it's like, it both gives the illusion of like she is behind bars already, and also like she is like enclosed here. She's encased. She feels like she's trapped and there's nothing she can do. This guy is on her and he's going to be hounding her forever. And it's like really visually interesting, where they're both just like standing there backs to the camera for a while, like holding on that scene. The other thing that I thought was interesting is there's like some close-up shots of her face specifically, where like the way it's framed is like the camera is like super soft and kind of fuzzy, and it feels kind of like I wrote this shit down somewhere. Where it feels almost like slightly like dissociative, or like she's like, you know, like falling apart sort of thing. But then later on they just do that for any close-up of her, and I realized, oh, this is just like the camera effect they use on Star Trek when a woman is on screen.
it's a very common,
they got a bouquet.
TOS woman camera.
Yeah. They got some bouquet in that shit.
It is really funny that there is like a shot of like that shot where she's like running away and like Columbo's like talking after her, is like they just hold on their backs for like a while.
Yeah.
it's a very
It's a good
like,
shot.
It's a nice shot that works in film, but like the stage playwriting part of my brain is like, you can't be facing away that long. Come on, guys.
What are you doing? You're
around.
facing the wrong way.
Yeah, it's like you're exiting. You should be exiting downstage so that he's looking at you and we can see her face when this is happening. Come on, guys. This is like it's amateur hour.
It's one of the couple of times where like in like really early Columbo, it's really interesting from like a cinematography perspective, because like a lot of the time it just kind of ends up like very flat in like the early stuff.
Yeah.
And then they're like doing interesting stuff with like the depth and the scene composition. It's cool.
Yeah.
So Columbo goes, puts the screws to her. We get a scene of her leaving the set and a police car following her to her her house.
Yep.
Just really showing that Columbo is definitely making good on his threat here. Like he's like,
we will
hey,
stalk you forever and ever, lady.
Like, I'm gonna stalk you. I know that you were a part of this, and if you're not gonna confess to this guy's murder, then I'm gonna send the police to menacingly park outside of your house. So she's
Whatever
at her
works.
house. She phones Fleming like, dude, you got to fucking help me. This Columbo guy, he like knows every single thing that happens. Like everything he said is correct. He knows that I was dressing up as Miss Fleming. Like she knows, he knows about our alibi on the plane. Like, you gotta fucking help me. And he's just like, I'll handle it tomorrow. And then
The
hangs up on
world's
her.
smartest man, the world's like self-described smartest man, when this woman is like in the middle of a fucking breakdown and is like, I need fucking anything right now. I can't deal with this. The world's smartest man just goes,
Why? What's wrong? Haha. Just hang out. It's fine.
He's just like,
calm down and go to bed.
yeah, I think he just tells her to like take some sleeping pills and you go to sleep or something like that.
He says put on some music and have a drink, which is
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Oh, also, two things from the previous scene before I forget. One, Columbo does bring up another thing about his wife, and it's that she prefers smoking a pipe to cigars.
Oh, that's true.
Two,
Yeah.
he also specifically mentions to the actress, like, because she's like, aren't you off the case? And he's like, no. I talked to my boss, and he was like, it's kind of weird that you got taken off the case. I want you back on it.
Yeah.
So she has that information to give to Fleming.
yeah.
Oh, that's right. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting. I mean, one of the fun things about Columbo is kind of trying to figure out which things that he ever says is true or something he is making up on the spot to try and
fuck with
accomplish
people?
something. Or to try to fuck with people. So it's like, was he ever taken off the case? Was this part of his plan from the start, is to say that he got taken off the case and then then say that he got put back on the case? But anyway, it's left as an exercise to the viewer in a fun way. So then they have a phone call. He says, I don't give a fuck. Go to sleep. And then fucking hangs up on her.
Just take some fucking Quaaludes or whatever. It'll be fine.
Next scene is he is back at his office, and he's basically like, I was supposed to have a meeting with Joan, but she didn't show up. What happened? They call her house, and then she doesn't answer. The coroner answers, and they kind of just leave it at that. They kind of just say, yeah, this isn't Joan. This is the coroner. He looks concerned. Fleming looks concerned. And then he drives over to her house and he sees a covered body. And, or I guess he sees Columbo first and then he sees a covered body.
Columbo is posed behind a really fucking funny looking ambulance that looks like it's some like Back to the Future shit. Isn't that what ambulances just used to look like?
Probably.
I have to assume so. And at this point, Columbo says something along the lines of like, what did you expect? She liked swimming and barbiturates or something. Not
She
exactly
overdosed
like
on
that.
Quaaludes.
Yeah, like something like that. And this is like this is the climax. This is the end of the episode. This is the big climactic finish where Columbo and Fleming, Joan is dead. This also has kind of an not out of character, but there's like an almost startling line where Columbo is like, yeah, I drove her to like we both drove her to suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm like he seems legitimately like angry and upset. He's like I had to do it, but we're both responsible.
I fucked up.
this.
The blood's on my hand, but it's on yours too.
Yep.
We're both guilty here.
So they have a very tense conversation where they kind of wrap back around to Columbo talking about this, quote, hypothetical murderer, you know, and he sort of says like why, like what would this hypothetical murderer do? I mean, like, why you loved her, you were in love with her, you wanted her, like what was the point of all of this? Like you may have killed your wife, but in the end you don't have anything. because
right, he's like, you're home free. We can't peg you. There's nothing we can do. But you don't get the girl either. What was it all for?
And this is where Fleming makes his fatal error, because he says, "Yeah, I didn't really give a fuck. Like that, it wasn't about that at all. I didn't care."
Doesn't he like specifically say like, "Oh, Columbo, you're so funny"?
Yeah, something like that. He's like, "Oh, Columbo, you're so dumb. You're so dumb and simple. I was never in love with her."
People. I never liked her. She was a little floozy that I was using to get out of my marriage.
Right. And that's when it's revealed that Joan is not dead. This whole thing was entirely a machination of Columbo's to pin him, which I love anytime this happens in the show.
An amazing Columbo honeypot moment.
Columbo has the best honeypots in the business. He will go so far to extract a confession from people or to catch them, and this is a great scenario where he literally feigns a suicide to get this guy to say, "Yeah, I never loved her anyway," which she overhears, and then it is implied that she basically gives up the whole ghost. And
she's like, "Oh, you dickhead. All right, motherfuckers, who wants a plea bargain?"
Exactly. And this is very interesting because I feel like there's not a whole lot of episodes, at least not that I can remember, where usually there's like a linchpin clue, right? Like there's the gotcha moment where Columbo finds the one piece of information that he needs to stick it to him. And
I guess the one piece of information is just kind of that he's a shithead that doesn't love this woman.
Yeah, it's interesting because like the linchpin clue in this episode is just a person, which is not normally how the show operates. It's normally like, some sort of physical thing or like a piece of information that doesn't add up. And then, but in this one, it's very interesting that it's just like, no, this person he just needed to convince her to give Fleming up.
Right.
And I thought that was very interesting because, that is unusual for a Columbo episode. They are normally, I don't want to say more straightforward per se, but it's interesting.
Usually more about like the murderer like getting themselves rather than like, an accomplice being the one to be like, "All right, this is what happened."
Yeah.
This feels much more like a generic sort of murder mystery sort of reveal, like a gasp. The twist here is that they're still alive, whereas in later ones it's much more like designed MO one. Like I remember the architect episode, like that's a really good honeypot
and the builder.
The architect and the builder.
Exactly.
There's like a really good honeypot in that episode that purely rides on like, all right, well, where did he put the body? It's like, if we do, and it's not about like, all right, tricking him into revealing this one thing or tricking him into getting someone else to reveal. It's just like, if I can, it's like, he hid the body, I got to trick him into revealing, right? Like, and then he goes through this whole concerted effort to get the guy for it. They eventually, they eventually lean more into that sort of twist reveal rather than something like this.
They kind of break it down to like, okay, it's almost like a video game. Like this is almost a gamification of it, but it's like, okay, Columbo needs a few pieces of information to solve the case. He needs a motive. He needs he needs them to not have an alibi, and he needs like the means, right? Like means, motive, and to break down their alibi. So it usually comes into one of those. But in this episode, it kind of works differently. It's just like, no, it's just, we just need a confession.
Gotcha.
They got a good ass gotcha. But that's the episode. And something I love about the ending of Columbo episodes is they do not waste your fucking time. They don't fuck around. They're just like, all right, we got him. Credits. Like, that's it. Like, sometimes you get, like, maybe one last gag right at the end on the more lighthearted episodes. But normally it's just like, Columbo confronts the murderer. He points out the discrepancy. And then the murderer is like, ah, damn. And then it's like,
Shit.
thanks for watching Columbo. And then that's it. It just goes straight to credits. I love it.
Great.
I don't really know how to put it into words, but sorry, I drank water and it went down weird. I'm not super strong on the ending of this episode compared to like other episodes, I suppose. Like
I think it's okay.
I like the ending of it being like, all right, this woman who is like, yep, you're my weak link, honey, so you just stay strong or whatever. I like that she's the one that turns it around on him in the end, but it like
It's weird
I think
in
it's
that
just the way that he starts like monologuing about how like, yep, I never loved her and it was just all to get out of it. It feels like, I don't know if contrived is the right word. It feels a little silly.
It is like it exists because I think it all hinges on. I think they did a pretty decent job of establishing Fleming as like very pompous and sure of himself. So I think it does make sense that he would be so confident. Then you know, for all he knows, Joan is actually dead. It's like, I don't think the first thing through a person's mind would be like, this is a setup. You tried to make me think she killed herself.
Yeah.
So I'll at least give him that much. But I do think that if truly Fleming was the purported genius to be, he would have just been like, aw, shucks, and then left.
But I mean, I guess that's kind of like part of the thing about him as a character is where he keeps insisting like, yep, I'm very not emotional. I'm entirely
That's true.
Logical driven. I'm very in control. And it's like, he very, very clearly is not, where he's just like super fucking smug about everything he does. And he's like super resentful of like all the people around him for being stupider than him.
That's
fun.
Yeah. It's good that's like the trap of it is like, putting him in this scenario, an ordinary person would just be like, "Oh fuck," and then leave. But he has to prove that no, I'm not like that. I wouldn't care about some woman and get her involved in my scheme and say something really hurtful about her.
I don't know. It's like I like that about him through the entirety of the episode, and then like right at the end, just something about it doesn't work for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the more contrived thing is not his reaction. It's just like a pacing thing in that they went from this woman being gang stalked to turning around to, I will help you set up this thing so that we can catch him saying that he doesn't love me and that this was all shit. That's probably the looking back on it. Like in the moment it worked really well, but looking back on it is like they went from that. There was a piece there missing, but it had to go from there to there because it had to look like she was so
suspense of that.
It had to look like she went straight from being tormented about being gang stalked to killing herself, when in actuality there was like some middle distance where she's like, all right, I'll help you.
Right. I think it's almost for the benefit of the viewer so that it doesn't, I mean, obviously it would be a less interesting reveal if they went through the process of showing you her agreeing to pretend to be dead. Like, then you don't get the twist at all.
Yes.
So it makes sense, but it is a little abrupt, I'll say. Maybe it's the kind of thing that works better as a stage play, perhaps, or something, but I'm not sure. It does kind of sprint to the finish line. I'm gonna say it was already long.
It's in favor of the twist. Yeah.
It was already long, and like maybe you could have had a couple more scenes of gang stalking. I don't know if that would be like good. It would definitely
that would add anything to it.
It would definitely like it would make it seem less abrupt whenever she decides to work with the police, but it would also kind of paint Columbo in a bad light that he is just like, yeah, I'm gonna gang stalk you until you agree to work with me.
He's such a fucking dickhead cop in this episode.
Yeah. It's like we said, this is definitely dark Columbo. This is some dark Columbo shit. Normally he's like bumbling around and having a good time,
like,
and
in later episodes I think it gets like an interesting dynamic where it like in a lot of ways it feels like Columbo is like the least cop a cop would be, while also causing friction with like to some degrees the fact that he is a cop. Like in some ways, like it's not doing like a fucking Disco Elysium thing, but like there's some stuff there that they play with sometimes that's interesting. And then in this episode, they're just like, nah, fuck it, send the boys after her, make her life living hell.
Yeah.
Why do you need a lawyer?
It's more like It is more like he's because they didn't have the blueprint for Columbo until this happened.
They're
so
playing
it's like
this is like a much more like by the numbers sort of
cop
like police detective
procedural
drama.
sort of thing. Yeah, exactly.
And like the parts of it that stand out as being like very Columbo are like very compelling. And I think the episode is like interesting in its own rights just to like, compare to later Columbos and how like the format changes and the character crystallizes and like, how they like playing with that over time. And having this as sort of like kind of a prototype that you can look back on and contrast is it's interesting. It's compelling.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's what most of the interest is, aside from like a couple of standout spots. Because other than that, it's like, yeah, this is a fine 60s, 70s cop drama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think the good parts are like it always the difference between a good Columbo episode and a bad Columbo episode a lot of the times comes down to the interplay between Columbo and the murder. And I think this episode does a very good job in the scenes where there is just extended dialogue between Columbo and the murderer.
Yeah.
I think that really is the standout parts of this episode is like they already had such a good idea where it's just this well-established character and a dickhead, and they're just they're just fighting each other with words. There's no, I mean, I think that's part of why I'm so compelled by Columbo is like, other than the murders themselves, it's not a violent show. Like there's there's hardly, I mean, I can think of maybe one time ever where there's like even an action scene per se, like there's not car chases or shootouts.
Very few and far between.
Like, I mean, hell, I think you maybe see a gun that isn't just directly involved with a murder, like barely ever. Like, it's not like the murderer almost never tries to just kill Columbo. Like, that's never part of their plan.
There's like one episode where that happens, like early on. I'm trying to remember where it was.
There was like an entire episode early-ish on where they make an entire point of going like, yeah, Columbo doesn't carry a gun. He doesn't want to carry a fucking gun on him. He's going out of his way to avoid like getting his fucking license at the shooting range so he can continue not carrying a gun on him.
Yeah, I remember, I don't remember what episode, but I remember they kind of end up introducing some like B plots in some of the 70s episodes that are basically like have literally nothing to do with the case, and it's just like Columbo doing something silly or like trying to accomplish something or avoid something. And one of the episodes is like they keep sending people for Columbo, like, you got to get your gun license renewed, and he just keeps finding ways to get out of it. He's like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to get it removed or renewed. But that's for a later episode.
Yup.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the first episode, the pilot, the first of 2 pilots for Columbo. Prescription Murder. I thought I think I'd give it like an 8. I liked it.
Yeah.
There's
it's
like
a good one.
There's something compelling in itself of like, knowing an established thing and seeing this like earliest sort of iteration of it. I had my weird contrived little sausage metaphor earlier, but it's like it's that fun point of comparison, and it's fun having like the couple really strong establishing character moments that we have for Columbo and like the villain in this that are like really, really good, that I think makes this episode worth watching. And then other than that, it's like, it's okay. I don't know if I want to give it a number rating. I fucking hate number ratings. I liked it.
You got to give it up for Dark Columbo. You get to see the dark side of Columbo, and then he's like, I really shouldn't have done that. I guess I'll never do that again.
I'll never do it again.
Evil Columbo fucking clawed his way out after years of like police academy training, and this man was like, that's kind of fucked. I have to put the raincoat on and suppress the demon.
Right, exactly. Yeah. The problem was the raincoat. The raincoat and the haircut. Once he gets a little bit of the disheveled hair and keeps the raincoat on, then he keeps the demons at bay.
Mm-hmm. It's that simple.
Well, yeah, that's it. That's our discussion of the first pilot episode of Columbo. Did you like it?
Columbo.
Did you dislike it? I don't care. I form my own opinions.
I took 3 pages of notes, and I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I don't see why we wouldn't continue doing the next episode.
Yeah.
The second pilot, and I don't know the name of it, so I can't say it. What's the second episode called?
I had that shit written down. Hang on.
I just had it. Hang on. Ransom for a Dead Man.
Ransom for a dead man. All right. Well, then, I don't know if we're doing this next week or maybe 2 weeks from now. I think it depends on people's general schedules. But yeah,
Yes.
Pretty
probably
sure I could do next week.
probably Sundays at this time, if that works for you, Mike and Holly.
You'll be fine. For the
Thank
most
you
part.
very much for joining me on this sudden Columbo adventure.
Yippee! I'll take any excuse to talk about this show in like a
Yeah.
more structured format than me just going, "Yep, I like Columbo. He's a little weird guy. Yep."
Yeah. Yeah, and as I was saying, just some programming notes here at the end. Yeah, we might. I guess we'll keep it to 1 episode for now. This one was probably going to be longer than other episodes that we'll record,
Right.
just because it is number one, it is a longer episode of Columbo, and also we had to kind of establish
Introduce the podcast.
Get in
Right.
here, yeah.
So I imagine as we get into the thick of things, whenever Columbo really hits its stride, whenever Columbo is at its most formulaic, we may have less to talk about each individual episode. We might
Yes.
start doing multiple episodes of their show in a single episode of this show. So
Yeah, we'll see how it
Stay
goes.
tuned. We'll do all of season 5 in 1 episode.
Yep.
maybe
We'll
I don't know.
do all of the 90s episodes, get 1 dedicated episode.
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait. Because here's the thing, I'm on the 90s season right now, like in my watch. I
Me too.
am so mad that we're going to have to go through so many episodes before we get to talk about those. The 90s season is so funny. It's like it's so funny. I love the 90s season. It's like it hits the perfect mark of some of them being so good and some of them being so stupid.
I think something that is really exciting to me about this podcast is just the thought of like, there's going to be some of these episodes we hit where we end up having like really different opinions about it from each other. Where like, for instance, like the first fucking episode of that 90s season, like just kind of offhand talking about it in our Discord server, Trog was like, "Oh yeah, I thought that episode was really good. I liked it a lot." And I was like, "Damn, I thought that episode was really stupid,
Yeah.
but I liked watching it." So it's gonna be fun to get to pick away at it like that and like
we're gonna get
have different viewpoints.
differing opinions. That's right. I think I said that there was an episode in the 90s season that I thought was the worst episode of Columbo ever. And you're like, "Oh, I loved that one."
That's exciting.
Which honestly, here's the thing. I can't say that's the worst episode of Columbo ever because I watched one a couple nights ago and I was like, "Okay, no, this is the worst episode of Columbo ever."
There's one of the like more later in the run episodes is like infamously bad because it's them like adapting a different mystery book that doesn't really have anything to do with the Columbo format. I haven't seen that one yet, and I'm super excited to get to
I
it
wonder what that
eventually.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny because I was reading about just like general Columbo facts about like the production and stuff, and it's very funny that they basically said like as the show went on, Peter Falk himself like took the show like under his iron grip. Like he was he was in charge of the show, which makes sense. You can't do Columbo without Columbo. But the reason that the first run basically ended is Peter Falk was just like, "I want more money." And he said that like so many times that the network was like, "No, you've lost your show, Mr. Falk. I'm sorry. We're not making any more of this."
Their fucking mistake.
It was good. It was a good show when it was good, and it was at least, it was at least funny when it was bad, usually.
Yeah. That's the best you can hope for.
Even the bad episodes are still a fun watch that I can remember offhand.
It helps that the show is so formulaic at a certain point that like even the bad episodes kind of have a general structure to go off of.
The best bad episodes are the ones that feel kind of like live action cartoons.
Oh yeah, there's some insane later some insane 70s, like the late 70s run have some just downright bizarre episodes. I don't even want to spoil anything, but I think there's one called like Farewell to the Commodore or something
Last
like
Salute to the
that.
Commodore.
Yeah, that one. It's like about boats. The ending of that episode is so dumb and weird.
That episode I love because when they were making that episode, I think they thought that was going to be like the end of the series.
Yes.
So they were like, fuck it. What if we do a parody of Columbo?
It's so
show?
bizarre. The other fun thing about watching Columbo, and this is like, we're in the bonus podcast now. Stop listening. But it's so funny to watch this show after watching Twin Peaks, because I feel like David Lynch must have fucking hated Columbo. I feel like I watched so much stuff in Columbo, and I'm just like, this feels like what Twin Peaks, the original first and second season run, was making fun of in TV. It's like,
I mean, Twin Peaks is also making fun of like soap operas.
Exactly. It's like Twin Peaks is like a combination of poking fun at both soap operas and like procedurals. And I feel like you see a few parts that is like, I'm like, this scene feels like it's downright Lynchian. Like what's happening in this scene? It's so crazy. But yeah, that's,
I can't fucking wait till we get to the Bye Bye Sky High IQ, whatever else the fuck.
right. Yeah, but we'll
That one's a classic. I don't know if it's good, but it's a classic.
I think that one's good. If I remember correctly, I really ended up liking that one.
I remember it being really fucking funny.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I guess unless you guys have any parting words, then we'll wrap it up here for the first episode.
Sounds good to me.
Thanks for listening to us talk about Columbo.
Yeah, thank you very
Tune
much.
into our new podcast that we're starting next month, which is going to be about some other 1940s TV series instead.
We'll do I wish I knew any other cop show from the 70s so I could say it, but
it doesn't have to be a cop show. We can do
All
like
right,
a Dream
Gumby.
of Genie or something.
We're gonna do Gumby.
Look
Shit,
forward
let's
to
do
the
a
Gumby
Dream of Genie.
podcast.
all right, we'll do what do you think we could come up with enough things to talk about for a single episode of I Dream of Genie to even
That would be like we'd probably win for like lowest viewed RTVS stream ever.
Maybe.
For doing just like.
It would just be us like
three
be
of
like,
us.
I don't know. They like, there's like a.
It was funny when she did that.
Yeah, I liked it when it was funny.
It was funny when she wore the racist outfit.
Doing Star Trek TOS is a good idea. Maybe.
That would be.
Hey, maybe we
Maybe
could.
someday.
Maybe.
I'd be down. Once we finish the gargantuan effort of like 69 Columbo movies, then we can do all 3,000 episodes of TOS.
There's actually there's way less episodes of TOS than I thought there was. That was actually not. That was like only 3 seasons of that show. We would be better off doing TOS than Columbo. If we do a Columbo podcast, even one a week, it's taking us over a year to get through all those suckers.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, well, whatever.
Slow burn, baby.
We'll see. We'll see if we can finish what we started. Finish eating our meal, our Columbo meal. Don't put too much in our mouth at once.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right, that's it. I got nothing else to say. Thank you very much for watching again. Thank you, Holly. Thank you, Mike, for being here with me.
Thank you.
And
are we gonna host this shit on like other platforms or whatever?
yeah,
like,
that is a great
iTunes?
question. That's a really good question.
See.
We will see. This might end up on the RTVS podcast feed along with Where Do We Begin, our
that'd be
other monthly podcast. If we end up doing this weekly, that feed is going to get real overrun with Columbo talks compared to our monthly podcast. So we'll have to see. At the very least, I'm sure this will get uploaded to YouTube.
Yes.
So we'll see. Maybe you're listening to this in an audio format somewhere. But yeah.
If you're listening to this audio only, I'm sorry you couldn't enjoy the really good image of Gene Barry looking like he definitely wants to have sex.
Yes, you did miss out on that.
He's not scared. He's not worried about the pussy. It's fine.
But if you are watching or listening to this after the fact, Sundays at 3 Eastern, that is going to be our time unless we can't do it, and then it will be at a different time. But we're gonna try. We're gonna try.
We'll see.
We're gonna try. But yeah, so that's it. thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys have a Columbo-rific day. What am I don't even know what that is. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm gonna turn the stream off now.
Gang stalking, kids.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.